Well, hello, everybody. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to be trickling in, but I just thought I'd give a little intro here and welcome you to Contemplating the Cosmos. And I'm Charlie, and with the Channel 4BZ Truth. And I have a special guest today that I wanted to actually just have a deep discussion with. And, I've been hearing some of the stuff that I've been kind of following him over the years, but he's been saying some stuff that has triggered my thoughts and made me think a little deeper about things. So I just thought I'd see where he was at, and in hopes to engage in some conversation with us here. So, anyways, I'm going to bring Jeran from Jeranism on. How's it going, Jeran?
Great, thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, I in a lot of ways, I want to just jump right into some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. But again, there's some things that, I'm actually open to kind of wherever the conversation leads. But
Okay.
I've been thinking, so this channel, just to kind of give you a heads up, is my objective is to basically get in to the deepest issues, not necessarily focus on one topic, but kind of see how everything ties together. Ranging from like flat Earth all the way to like near-death experiences and paranormal and all kinds of different stuff. I think it's all interesting, and it all kind of has some sort of relational. It all comes back to philosophy, or the philosophy of interpretation, or even position. Whatever bias you're operating from. So I actually wanted to, for my audience, because honestly, I probably have about maybe 50% of my audience that might know who you are.
Okay.
The other 50% probably doesn't. So, and I think that I've kind of shot myself in the foot in a lot of ways, with a lot of the diverse topics, because half the people are willing to put up with me with crossing over, from flat Earth to near-death experiences and back, because it's all or nothing sometimes with some people. So,
Yeah.
anyways, so I wanted to let you introduce yourself. This is Jeran, everybody, and maybe you can give me or give the audience a little tidbit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Jeran. I've got a YouTube channel, Jeranism, started in 2015. And yeah, I used to be a store manager of a drugstore, CVS, or it was formerly Long's before it became CVS. And just noticed that I hated the way the company was going. I hated the way it was becoming corporate, and I could just see it happening in the world. And so I kind of talked to my wife, and we decided, if you want to stop, let's try and work from home. So I said, okay. So I did that, and we ran a bookstore for a few years from home, and struggled to make ends meet with that. But during that time, I had a lot of time to research. So it was the first time in my life that I was awake to some things. I was way behind everybody else in like 9/11, things like that. Truth all came very, recent, relatively recent for me. And once I learned that I'd been lied to on such vast levels, I kind of talked to my wife and just said, let's erase everything that we were taught, just erase it all, and just kind of build up a belief system based on things we could prove ourselves and things that we could see ourselves. So that was kind of the original thought. And so we kind of erased everything. And real quickly, in the first week or two, she looked out. We used to have a 2-story house where we had quite a view from the second story. And she kind of looked out and said, do you think the earth could be flat? And I got real pissed at her because I said, no. Why would you? I was like, where did you get that from? I said, no, she's gone to Germany going east. I've gone to the Philippines going west. And I said, so clearly the earth is a sphere, and you can fly around it. And we know that. And so she said, okay, sorry. I thought we were, going through all our beliefs from the very beginning. And I said, well, some things are fundamentally true. Some things we don't need to go back and revisit. So it was about like maybe a couple weeks after that I was looking into the moon landing, because it was kind of a thought that I had where if they lied about the moon, then all the thoughts of no conspiracies can exist, or that, any kind, too many people would have to be involved. All those things would, if I could prove to myself that the moon landing was faked, would prove those kind of fake, right? So then I would have a better picture of whether or not governments could tell massive lies and keep them secrets for 50 years. Mm-hmm. So I was just searching the internet for anything I could on moon landings, and I happened to come across Eric Dubé's site, right? The Atlantean Conspiracy. And as I was reading through that, and he's got a couple of pages on the moon stuff. So I was there. I didn't even know flat Earth was a thing. And then I saw the azimuthal equidistant map. And I'm kind of looking at that map and kind of looking at it. And then I picture myself flying to the Philippines from California. And I picture my wife flying to Germany from the Philippines. I mean, from California. And I just started looking at that map, like, and it was this wake up moment for me that I'll never forget, where I realized that because of my indoctrination, if you want to call it that, my brainwashing, that when she said, could the earth be flat? I lashed out. Absolutely not. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Planes go around it, right? So then seeing this map, it kind of woke me up to, wait a second, planes can go around that map. So then I said, oh, thank God. Well, they can't go north south. You know, they can't go around the South Pole, or, you know, so I said, okay, people have done that, so this map is probably debunked. So I started looking up as best as I could any evidence of people going north-south circumnavigation. And I found that one guy, Sir Ranulph Fiennes, I think his name is, and he's like a cousin of the Queen, and he's a baronet. He's got all these accolades. They call him the world's greatest explorer. But then I found like court cases that he was involved in where he was found guilty of faking accidents on expeditions, basically faking moments of his expedition. So then I started saying, wait a second. So there's one guy who's done the north-south circumnavigation. He's been proven to be a fraud, and he's a cousin of the Queen. And there's billions of people who have gone east-west. To me, that was the first time I said, geez, don't tell me the earth can be flat. And I wanted to kind of debunk it so that I didn't ever have to admit to my wife that because I basically called her like stupid. Like, what? No, what are you talking about? How could the earth be flat? It's dumb. Planes go around it. So then the more I kept looking into it, the more I finally just told her, I think maybe we need to look into this. So I started looking into it, and just everything I could find was shocking, mostly about things that I always felt like I thought every bit of science was true. Like, science doesn't have biases. These are guys who do experiments. They use observations. So there's no possible way that what they're saying is incorrect. Well, that's when I found the physicist. Let me think of his name real quick. So he's the one who says, he can construct a spherically symmetrical universe with the Earth at its center, and you couldn't disprove it based on observations. Then he says a lot of cosmology is built around for philosophical reasons. Our models are built for philosophical reasons. And he says a lot of cosmology tries to hide that. So
was this guy from like the 1600s or something? Or
no, this is a guy who's alive now.
Oh, gotcha.
And he said he can, put the Earth at the center, and it can't be disproven based on observations, which was shocking to me. I said, what do you mean? We can't be the center of the universe. That's already been proven. And so it kind of started to go down that, rabbit hole, and realize what he was talking about is that they never were able to disprove that we're the center of the universe. That observationally, it appears that we're the center. So they had to invent things to allow them to go in different directions. And one of those things was the expanding universe. Because if everything's moving away from us, we're standing here on the Earth, and everything in every direction is moving away, that tends to place you in the center. But if you are expanding, in which case you can kind of picture a balloon and put a bunch of dots on a balloon. And if somebody's blowing up that balloon, then all the dots get further away from every dot. So if you're standing on one of those dots, all the dots. So I always thought that was observationally sound and not made up. So that was the first thing. And then I found Edwin Hubble, because then from that I learned that Edwin Hubble is the one who discovered the expanding universe. And have you heard the Edwin Hubble quote, the absolute?
I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've heard it several times. I'm just not thinking about it right now.
No, it's just one of the bigger quotes ever, because he's the one who discovered the redshift. He's the one that discovered the galaxies moving away from us. And then they came up with spatial curvature, and they came up with the expanding universe. So when I found out, what he basically says is that the observations tell us that we are in a unique position. And he said, analogous in a sense to the ancient conception of a central Earth. He says, but that must be avoided at all costs. I'm like, what? And then he goes through, it's the absolute horror of a unique position, and they won't tolerate it. They won't have it. So he says there seems to be no other escape than to go in this direction. So, and he writes this in his papers. So when I read that, I realized, oh my God, we're up against something pretty crazy here. Because what it means is, observationally, they had two choices. Well, no, they had one choice. Okay, so it means we're the center of the universe. So then they started thinking of ways that it couldn't be that, and then they took all of science in that direction. So everything we talk about, the expanding universe, the Big Bang, redshifting galaxies, all that stuff has been implemented because it was the only other option besides we're the center of the universe. And they say they want to stay away from that for modesty purposes, that they're modest. They don't think it's, there's no way we can be important. So from that, it all just started going downhill from there. Just the more I looked into it, the more I saw that we've been deceived, the more I listened to these guys about evolution. Because kind of my story, I know I kind of skipped past that, but originally what happened, my wife and I were talking about how we were going to raise our kid if we had one, because she's from a Bible believing Christian family and I'm from a Catholic family. So we'd never really discussed that. And we started discussing it. And she said, oh, well, the Bible's, definitely true in the Word of God. I'm like, what? No, the Bible's written by man. I said, Catholics know that because they're the ones who wrote it. Basically, they don't try and claim that it's God's word because they say some of it's inspired, but I think it's because mostly they know that it's been written by man. So we kind of went back and forth and we decided like we need to iron this out and figure it out. So we just started trying to explore that on our own. And real quickly, we realized there was a problem. And the problem was that we both felt very nervous about going outside the Bible, right? Meaning we'd both been told that anything from outside is Satan. So we didn't know really what to read. Like, what are you safe reading? What are we safe, looking into? So then we basically, I still remember a day like it was yesterday. We laid in bed, held hands, prayed to God, and just said, look, give us a year to look into this. Give us a year to look outside the Bible. Give us a year to search for you. If you're the real God, you're going to be there at the end of this. There's no way that, you're going to lead us astray. So we did that prayer, and then we just started reading the Bible. That was our first step, because I kind of told her, well, let's read the Bible, and if it's true, we'll know it. And if it's not, then we'll move from there. And we got to maybe the first 6 or 7 chapters, and there was already enough in there that we were pissed that a lot of the stuff in there was never taught to us. Even though as a Catholic, you sit in church every week, they read you the first reading, the second reading, here's the gospel, and they're readings from the Bible. But of course, they don't read the stories that you read when you read it yourself. So when we read those stories ourselves, we just had a different feeling for God. We even had a different feeling for Jesus. We thought some of the things that were said were not correct things to say, or wouldn't be things that you would say. And so we just became disillusioned with the whole thing. And we basically became atheists. So we went from praying to God, saying we'd find him. Then within 3 months or so, we said, no, it's all garbage. It's all lies. And then my kind of response was, well, science is the answer. Science is they don't have religions. They don't have high priests. They just have facts and evidence. So I started to really dig in. I wanted to learn about the age of the earth. I wanted to learn.
And this was like 2014-ish.
This would be 2000, probably 13.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2013. So I wanted to kind of debate Christians was my kind of idea in my head. I was like, okay, I got to tell Christians, because I was at that point, 35 or so. And I knew that I felt like the first part of my life was a waste. So now I want to get these people who are also wasting their lives not to waste it. So I started to go into like Facebook groups and try to communicate with people. And I noticed that I would get, because I started to learn about some of these things, like for instance, carbon dating versus radiometric dating, right? So some guy one time was in a forum and he said, the earth is 6,000 years old. And this is proven by the oldest tree is 4,000 years. He's saying a bunch of stuff like that. And then he said, prove me wrong or something. So the very first guy that goes in there says, we know, idiot, that by carbon dating, the earth is 4.54 billion years old. So as soon as I saw that, I said, that's dumb. That's, carbon dating goes back.
Yeah, but you couldn't even measure with carbon dating anyway.
No, it's like 20.
It's radiometric dating.
Correct. So I went to
potassium, argon, or go ahead.
Right. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, this guy's wrong. So I just was trying to tell him, even though I was on his side, I just said, oh, by the way, it's radiometric dating. Radiocarbon dating only goes back 20,000 years. And then he jumped on me like, oh, you stupid creationist. Da, da, da. And then here comes like 5 more people. They're all piling on. And I'm like trying to tell them like, hey, whoa. I'm on your side here. Hold on, And everything they were saying was just wrong. They were just saying things that were just wrong. And I'd only been researching it for like a month. And I knew that they were wrong. So I was like really shocked by that. Like, what the hell's going on? So then I started to like seek out some of these big names, Sam Harris, Dawkins, like, evolution, I still couldn't grasp. I just couldn't understand it. So I said, let me go to Dawkins. I'm sure he's got some sort of spiel or something that'll help me with this. And I kept listening to one after another. And I quickly realized like, this guy don't know shit. He doesn't know anything. He's like saying things that are, and I'm like, the more I kept thinking to myself in my head, I kind of had this nervous feeling of like, what if this is a religion? What if then,
Yeah.
then is the Bible, then the Bible must be true. So I was very kind of caught in between of what, and the reason that it really shocked me is I went to an all boys Catholic high school, Jesuit Catholic high school in California. And right away I had a problem with school because we had religious studies class. And then after that class would be biology, where we'd be learning about the church and God and things like that. And then we'd go right over and learn about evolution. And I was like, wait a second. I thought, growing up as a Catholic, I was told like evolution wasn't real. But here I was at a school that was Catholic, that was teaching me Catholic things, but then turning and teaching me also about evolution being true. So I was like, I became disillusioned with school altogether, basically, because I didn't really get where they were going. And it was a school that was like 35 minutes away from my house. So I wasn't really friends with the guys there. It just became like I didn't like school very much, but I never could understand what that was about until now. Now I look back and realize why that is. And it's because, well, the Jesuits are terrible people, but I think that they want you in a belief system. So does everybody. So it doesn't matter who you are in the world. They want you in a belief system, because if you believe what they want you to believe, whatever it is, then you're very predictable. They know exactly what to expect from you. So if you think about it, like every person who believes in science is very predictable. Like, did anybody who believes in science not get the vaccine? Of course not. If you believe in science, then you got the vaccine. So the people who believe in science don't even really have their own thoughts, because they just believe exactly what science believes. They don't even have to do any work. It's a very lazy position to do, right? You could just say, I believe in science. And then even if you're wrong about something, you say, yeah, well, the good thing about science is we always are right eventually. We clean up our mistakes and we become right. So that was basically my first look into this whole thing, was realizing, wait a second, I think religion is an awful dogmatic position to take. You don't even have your own beliefs. You're believing what's in a book written by men. And then I
Well,
realized,
can I ask you real quick, as
right,
far as religion is concerned, how deep had your investigation gone? Like, sounds like you researched Christianity, but did you look into like Hinduism or Judaism, or that kind of thing? Obviously, Judaism ties into
right.
Christianity, but
No, not much. I mean, I tried to look for something that matched kind of the ideas of Christianity, or thinking, a monotheistic kind of position. And there just wasn't a lot. I looked into the Vedic, which I've been looking into more recently, but still, then at the time I was looking at that like, whoa, this is just even more convoluted. There was all these different gods, and they are all emanations of certain gods. And that just seemed kind of over the top.
by the way, we're going to get into that, because there's a lot of different ways to interpret scripture. And let me just say real quick,
Yes.
not to cut you off, but I just want to find a common ground real quick. So I do operate from a Christian perspective, but at the same time, like the little guy up in the corner here with that says 4BZ truth,
Yes.
his brain's falling out of his head, and that's kind of the concept of where I'm going with everything. I'm opening my mind so much that my brain is falling out of my head.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It happens.
but I try to keep an open mind in a way that I'm not necessarily dismissing a perspective
Okay.
that I operate from, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, clear your mind, try to
Right.
understand things a little more from someone else's perspective. And so that's when, man, it does get convoluted when you start really investigating with an open mind.
Yeah, I
Um,
think as long as you are okay with that, right? So I think a
mhm.
lot of people, and this is what I think they've done a good job of training us to, when they sit you when you're in first grade, second grade in a desk, and they tell you that lady up there knows all the answers, and it's going to give, the teacher's going to tell you, and you're just going to have to memorize it. That we kind of learn that's where truth comes from, is from other people and them telling us what to believe. And then we have to learn to believe it and repeat it. And that's basically truth. So even though none of us growing up understood anything that we were being taught about the universe, the solar system, the size of the sun, the distance of the sun, that we're all moving and spinning and flying through space, we just didn't get it because they tell you at such a young age, and you don't really have the opportunity to question that. You would get laughed at if you did, because you just get laughed at. So I think they do an impressive job of that, because then what it does is in the future. So like if I tell somebody that I don't believe in the globe earth, that I'm a flat earther or whatever, if they're a globe earther, they just say stupid shit like, well, yeah, well, explain how everything in the universe works then. It's like, what? I'm not claiming to know how everything in the universe works.
It's like, we have an answer for it. What you're supposed
Right.
to have an answer.
And they won't even think of going to the other side unless you have all equal answers to them. But the funny thing is, they don't even understand the answers that they're given. Like one of the
Just
things I always go back
regurgitating.
to is a neutron star, which is just a certain type of star, whatever. They say where a teaspoon weighs 21 billion pounds. So
yeah,
to me, and this is the point that I've come to in my life, is that I'll laugh at anything that I think is stupid, and I'll tell people I think it's stupid, and I don't care if I'm wrong. I don't care if it eventually gets proven to me. I feel better about being honest rather than the past. If somebody said that to me, I go, oh, wow, really cool. And just ignore it and figure somebody figured that out. Somebody understands that. Somebody knows that. But it's not true. Nobody knows that. It's required of their mathematics for these neutron stars to weigh the weight that they say they are. But we're smart enough to think of a teaspoon, if you picture that, and we say, well, what's the most something can weigh? A teaspoon. I mean, it's not 21 billion pounds. That's dumb, So once I was able to get kind of the balls to say those things and to be okay with calling out some of what I consider to be absolute total fraud, like them saying what's inside of an atom, right? So they say there's a proton and a neutron and they orbit the nucleus and all this, and you're like, wait a second, inside of an atom? And what is an atom? And they're like, well, it's the smallest piece of anything that there is. You're like, how do you know what's inside of it?
It's all theoretical, and it's just a smaller model of like a solar system or something.
Which is sad, but they pass it off as if they know. They draw little pictures. And so as a student, as a child, or even in high school, you assume that they're talking about things that are facts, not just things that they've agreed on and said, okay, we're going to teach this and go forward. And I'm not saying they're not useful. Some of them are useful, that they can use the ideas behind it, but it doesn't mean that those things are facts. And people are very confused at that. When you tell somebody we've never seen an atom, they get so pissed off. And it's like, look, you can't see an atom, because if you could see it, then you can cut it in half. And if you could cut it in half, then it's not an atom. I mean, it's that simple. The atom is the smallest thing that there can be. So it's not an actual thing. There's no real thing. Now they can take that wherever they want, and they take it pretty far. But anyway, once I started realizing that this is just another religion, then I said the place to be is the middle. The middle, where I want to be is in the middle, where you can actually choose for yourself based on evidence, based on people's opinions, what they present to you. You can choose which one better matches your reality. And that's how I think we should act. So once I was okay with not knowing, right? Because at first you're like, I have to know how this works. Like if somebody asked me now, well, Jeran, are you saying you don't know what the sun is? And I'd be like, no, I have no idea. And most people cannot live like that. Most people have to have some, like, well, I believe it's a nuclear furnace in the sky. Okay, great. You can believe that if you want. I don't.
I gotta say that, it kind of reminds, so just to touch on Christianity for just a second. Okay. So the Pharisees, they had an answer for everything, right?
Right.
It didn't matter if it was right. It was just that's kind of how most hypocritical religions, you might say, might operate, is they operate from an absolutist perspective. And
right, and science is the same way. Same with Christianity, and I think it comes from, once you've adopted a belief system that you hold as true, then any kind of evidence that's going to come in that would be anything against that, you have to shut down. And it's also something, have you ever tried to wake somebody up or tell somebody something? Nobody ever believes you the first time you tell somebody something. My friend told me 9/11 was an inside job. I said, get the hell out of here. Don't ever say that shit to me again. That's dumb. You're an idiot. Go away. And it wasn't until months after that I was home alone one day and was just like, wait, what was he talking about with nine? And then I started doing my own
planted
research.
The seed.
Yeah. So that's what's important, is planting that seed. Not because I think there's too many people who are always trying to convince other people, and you're just never, the more you push on somebody, the more they're going to put up a blocker, right? The more they're going to fight against you. So I think that that's why I try not to really stand too firm on anything. I'd rather be open to everything, be open that I'm wrong. And then I just really appreciate when people give me their honest opinions, because I don't think we get that much anymore, right? You don't get it you don't get it from people on the news or on the radio. Usually those people are reading from a teleprompter, or they're saying exactly what they're paid to say. Whereas with me, since I don't work for anybody, I can get away with saying whatever I want, which is a great feeling. I wish more people felt comfortable doing that. But in today's world, if you have a job or anything like that, you gotta watch out.
Man, I'll tell you what, like I am, like I was telling you, my topics are diverse. I I don't really operate from any way. I don't operate to retain people to my channel, because in a lot of ways, unless I, connect with somebody like you, or I have founded Earth Brothers here as well, and then Infinite Plane Society. Some of these guys that I've connected with in the past, they help boost my channel a little bit. So the bottom line is, I, some of these topics I end up losing more people than I gain.
You're talking, speaking, preaching to the choir there. I've done some of the stupidest things anyone's ever done.
But I know,
but they're being true.
The last 2 weeks, you've been really touching on some stuff that you're probably losing a lot of people.
Again, it's just because I have to be true to myself. It's more important to me than numbers. I've never cared about how many subs I have, especially, whatever it was 2 years ago or something when I got shadow banned. The channel's never going to move anywhere anyway. So it's kind of like, well, my choices are either to go along with things that I don't agree with when somebody brings them up or when somebody says it, or to just be myself and take what comes. And I try and be myself and take what comes, but it's not smart. It's not, smart for the channel numbers wise, monetarily wise. If people are going to, I've gotten like,
well, I mean, it's kind of like the planting the seeds thing. I mean, if you're
Correct.
sowing a seed that is worth anything, eventually maybe it will reflect in a positive way for your channel. Who knows?
Right. And I'm good at like getting in there, saying what I need to say over the course of a couple weeks or whatever, and then just moving on to another topic. And like you said, it's planting the seed, and the hope would be that people would recognize. Because another thing I think people know, I really don't say things on my channel unless I really feel good about it. Right. So I don't just have to constantly retract things, or I'm not one of those guys, because there's channels out there that just make crazy assumptions about people, and this person's really this person, or this person didn't die, like Kobe Bryant didn't die. I mean, to me, that's a crazy thought.
How do you know?
Yeah, you just don't know. And there's a helicopter that crashed, and supposedly, I mean, there's tons of families. It wasn't just Kobe. It was like 5 or 6 families that had daughters who all played in this basketball team, and those girls are gone. So, and the people that were with them are gone, and Kobe's gone, and Kobe's daughter's gone, and his wife now lives by herself with the other daughter. So when somebody's going to say, I'm like, okay, well, where's the evidence that, oh, well, in this cartoon, he crashes a helicopter? I'm like, yeah, because people knew he took a helicopter every day. So it would be how you would assume he would die in a cartoon. Yeah. So again, it's like
you might say that's prophecy fulfilled, and you might get into the fact that the Bible makes claims about things, and you were like, look at that prophecy fulfilled.
Well, I don't mind somebody bringing it up, like, look at this, isn't this interesting but people make definitive statements like 100% Kobe didn't die, guaranteed. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's just not for what I do on my channel, because I feel like that's a easy way out. And like, since nobody can ever, how's somebody going to prove that he did? Right? What do I? So am I going to go down and get a death certificate? Well, then you just say it's faked. So I don't like channels that do that. That are just like, well, I'll just say things that can never be disproven, and this way I can just kind of maintain an audience. So mine has always been more about give my opinion rather than say I know for a fact this or that. And then when I do say I know for a fact of things, it's because I've kind of reached that point where I can't really picture the opposite being true. That's all. Like, the reason I did the video on is YHVH worthy of worship is because I'd gotten to the point where I said, I cannot see it. I cannot see it anymore. I can't imagine calling that God or praying to that God, or even people thinking I do that. So when I asked that question, I wanted people to tell me how they felt that he was moral. And the comments were, or the people who called him, was ridiculous. Nobody gave me anything other than, well, it's God, and God has to be respected and worshipped. So I totally disagree.
Let me just say, this is a topic that's going to probably dominate our conversation, because I do want to hash it out and I want to get into the meat of it. Okay. But I kind of want to set a little bit of a stage real quick to kind of, get into where I'm coming from in terms of how to interpret, like, from a philosophical perspective. Now, I think you said you saw my interview with Brian
Stavely,
Stavely, yeah. And he got me to think about some stuff, and I get into all these different topics like near death experiences. I don't know if you ever heard of like Dave Politis, the Can-Am Missing Project.
No.
Um, so that's you should look into it. What it is basically thousands of people going missing all over the world,
Hmm.
and they, I mean, the thing that's kind of being alluded to is they're disappearing into vortexes, or being removed by like Bigfoot or something.
Are these the people that go on hikes and go missing?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I've
basically.
heard them on Coast to Coast, I think.
Yeah. So, and he was interviewed on Coast to Coast before. So
Yeah, I think I heard them on there.
yeah. So and he has like a huge following. And then I even started listening to Mr. Ballin. I don't know if you ever listened to Mr. Ballin, but
Yeah, I've heard of
uh,
them.
a lot of the stuff that he's getting into is just how people die in weird ways. Because I have a weird fascination with death, in the sense that I want to know what it is like to die.
Hmm.
And not in a creepy like serial killer way, but more so like I guess a Christian way, because a lot of, or the near death experience
Hmm.
aspect. I feel like there's people that die, and they make it sound like it's an easy transition once it happens, and then everything's blissful after that, or it's dark, and there. I mean, there's such a vastness to the topic, and I'm not saying that there's any authority with that. I'm
Right.
actually saying that there's, in some ways, you can't really give anything authority,
No.
unless you want to believe it,
Right.
and really the belief aspect of it. I think you alluded to a little bit on this on your channel last night, because I was listening to like how when you start actually operating from a belief, you can actually start manifesting things.
Absolutely.
um, I don't really know how much I believe that necessarily, but it intrigues me enough to do that test where you can start cussing at like water
Have you ever
or
done? You
rice or
haven't done the
whatever it
rice
is.
experiment test?
No, I was.
You
Have
got to do
you?
it. It changed. Yeah, it changed my life. Really. I mean, it's basis of a lot of
the
what I
wa-
believe.
the, the water thing that you were mentioning about how H2O. Now, granted, H2O, I actually believe that there's something to it, in the sense of extracting hydrogen and oxygen from water, and actually using it as fuel. Um, Now, granted, I don't really know how that like from a molecular standpoint or whatever, but or like atoms being all that stuff, but
Right.
it's more so like like you were saying, water, it almost like has some sort of substance that allows things to manifest, and it's kind of like a medium that you can actually
Well,
change things.
they've done some studies and some experiments on whether or not it like holds memory. It can actually hold information. They've also done a test where you give a full dose of medicine to somebody and then you dissolve a tiny bit of medicine into water. And whenever they do that, both people have the same results. It's as if the tiny bit of medicine is able to communicate somehow throughout the water and multiply itself or something like that. So there is a lot of evidence that says that water has memory. And then I don't know if you've seen the work of Dr. Emoto. He's the one
Yeah,
who
I've
did
seen it a little bit.
yeah, he did the high speed photographs of water when it froze, and shows that the water that you're nice to, that you speak to, has like beautiful geometric, nice clean patterns, and then water that you are rude to or say negative things to has like a broken up, they look ugly. And
Yeah.
then he also does that with writing words on the water, or water that came from a spring versus from like sludge or in the gutter, or something like that. And it
Hmm.
seems to show that water does respond to positivity. So that was
Yeah.
interesting for me, because the experiment that we did about 2 years ago was you cook rice and you put it in three like mason jars, about they have to be the same size. So we cooked rice, put an equal amount in each mason jar, closed them up, and you can tighten them because you'll never open them again. And then we wrote love on one, neutral on the other, and hate on the other, and then put them in the cupboard. And every day my phone would go off, and we'd go in there and spend 15 or 20 seconds with the love and 15 or 20 seconds with the hate. Just the love, you say, oh, you look so beautiful, you look so clean, you look really edible, you're looking great. And then you put that one back in the cupboard, and then you grab the hate one and then yell at it until it's a piece of shit and it looks like shit. And right away, within like 2 weeks, you're seeing it. And so then you're yelling at them, and you're actually like you're like the love rice looks edible. Nothing's happened to it. It looks great. So you're saying, you look really good. You look fantastic. And then you look at the black, like, look at that. You're turning black. You're turning gross. You're all disgusting. You look like sludge. And then after about a month, it's the most clear cut experiment of all time. The neutral rice is in the middle. It's kind of soupy. The love rice is completely edible looking, and the hate rice is turned black and moldy. So then when I heard about Emoto's experiments, it made me realize that water is probably the catalyst there. We're probably not changing anything about the rice. More than anything, it's because it's cooked, right? So it has water content, and then you're talking to the water more than anything. So, but also I do believe that maybe our words and our attitudes and our thoughts, and we can manifest. So for instance, we used to have a dog, and the dog would just bark constantly from the backyard, and I would just yell. I'd turn around and, shut up, Buster, shut up, da 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 da. And then the first time I go to do that after doing the rice experiment, it made me kind of realize, like, well, I don't want his insides turning to mush, yelling at him, right? So, well, be good, dog. I'll be out there in a minute. So it kind of just changes the way you are. And they've done experiments with like children, different kind of environments for them to be raised in, right? So if you are always on the kid's case and you're being negative, then they turn into a negative person. If you're positive and kind of build them up, then you can usually get the opposite. But I mean, there's always a middle point where you got to get there. I mean, if you give trophies to kids that come in 8th place, then that's probably not good either. So you have to kind of find a happy medium.
The happy medium,
yeah.
No, I appreciate. Yeah,
I was gonna ask you real quick. Do you believe in reincarnation at all? No, because you're a Christian.
So I've been open-minded to it. I had an interview with Eben Alexander. I don't know if you heard of. He's like one of the most famous near-death experiences out there. Now he says that he believes in reincarnation. And I was thinking about it because most of the people I've talked to, and I've had interviews with probably like 30 near-death experiencers, and they've kind of concluded is that everything is an eternal now. It has nothing to do with eternity, has nothing to do with a timeline or anything like that. Everything is just now, and we interpret it on a timeline because that's just here. Right. But that's time and space that has kind of twisted our thoughts in that way. And
photographs and videos are also something that kind of throws a wrench in the idea, because then it's reminders of the past that it did happen and it did exist, and then it kind of gets convoluted. I totally agree that it is the now that's the only thing that exists.
Yeah. So and it's really just amplified when you die and transition to this. Wherever it is you're going, whether it be outer darkness or into the light, but you just have this awareness of just everything being, just fully aware. You're just fully aware. Now, I don't understand how people could predict the future, because I just listened to a near-death experience that was given some sort of insight about the future, and everything came to pass. Now, again, how do I verify that?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a little bit tough. I mean, somebody to prove that to me would need to predict the score of a sporting event.
Well, this lady actually said something pretty, pretty out there. But I mean, if it doesn't come to pass, then you'll know it's not worth anything. And she says that Trump is actually not going to become president on the next term. He's actually going to be president in 2028.
Oh, that's weird.
So I'm like, okay. And then she kind of gave a timeline of about 70 years. And I'm like thinking, okay, this lady, she says she's a medium, and that she, or like whatever you call it, a psychic. And she actually can tell people about their own lives. I actually talked to another near-death experience where I talked to her over the phone. I never interviewed her necessarily. I was just over the phone. And she actually can stand in front of somebody and talk about how they're sick. Like she can actually diagnose somebody just by looking at them, and get into the root issues, and not just like the superficial stuff. Like if somebody says, "Oh, your appendix is about to burst," but there might be an underlying issue that would cause something like that, and she can address that. And that's I'm like, awesome. I don't know how to prove that one way or another, but if these people are making these claims, it's like, it's intriguing to me. I'll put it on a shelf and see
Well,
how that.
certain humans have crazy abilities, which I think we forget sometimes, right? There's people they call
Yeah.
Rubber Man because he can bend his arm all the way around, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's guys that can take pain like a nail being nailed into their hand.
Yeah.
So there is kind of special people. I don't know if you've ever seen the guys who have memories where you can tell them any date in the past, and
Yeah.
they'll tell you the
I was going to
weather.
make I actually addressed that on Patterns of Reality, episode 2.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
crazy.
it's one of those things where I'm like, there are superhumans. I don't know
Yes,
how somebody can be born with something differently than someone else, but how do they read? Where do they put all that memories? And
yeah,
it's
it's
not even a
crazy.
memory. It's just an awareness.
It's an awareness. It's an association. You tell them a date, and they're like, "Oh, that was a Tuesday, and it was raining."
Yeah, that's Kim Peek.
It's like,
Uh,
oh,
Kim Peek. He was in Salt Lake City,
yeah.
and he died a few years back. But
And then
um,
there's the reincarnation. To me, that because I guess where I would put more weight on reincarnation than I would near death experiences is because to me, a near death experience could be kind of like a hallucination. It could be a dream of some type. Could be. Doesn't mean that they all are. I'm just saying it could be. Whereas when a child is detailing names and events and things that happened in their life, in their previous life, to me, it either means that the parents have coached them to say all those things, but there's really no, because it's not something that's talked about, it's not going to make the news. It's not, they don't like to bring it up anytime. It's just something that's kind of hush hush. That to me is like, well, the parents aren't making out because of it. So I can't picture if lying to your child and telling your child to lie to people made you money, then I could see people doing it. But if it's just, you're just doing it for fun or something. And I mean, these are kids who remember, and at least the whole thing would have to be a production. There's like kids who remember having a sister and they'll say the sister's name and then they'll say where they lived. Then the parents will look it up and they'll find this person, and the person's still alive. She's like 80. So they talk to her, and
yeah.
the kid remembers things when he's talking to this 80-year-old. They're like, he remembers hiding places. He remembers things that happened that only he would know, her brother.
So I have a theory about that,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that it's not possible, because I don't know. I don't have a way to know.
Right.
But I do have a theory on the.
Please, because I
Uh,
would like to know how the kids come up with this stuff.
so like I think that one of the most interesting things I've heard in near death experiences, people join the light and become God, and they're a part of God, or they're part of
Interesting.
the. And let me just say one quick thing about the Bible, just real quick, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to expand on this yet, but I do want to say that I believe the Bible actually says the host of heaven, or the Elohim, are what created the earth. It was never about and Jesus actually was made reference, and I think it's Colossians maybe, where he was actually the creator of the earth,
Yeah,
and
I've heard
uh,
that.
and he was the among the host of heaven, or the angels. So now most Christians wouldn't know that. They don't think that. They think the heavenly Father created the earth.
Right.
And I like a Yahweh, or whoever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually feel like there's just a lot of things in the Bible that are misunderstood, misinterpreted, based from the religious goggles that they're looking through. And now I don't want to. I still want to go back and say that the paranormal, the near death experiences, the DMT, trips that people have, I think are interesting, and how they kind of you might get a glimpse of the alternate realities out there, and I think that maybe this is a realm kind of like the Matrix, or um, not a simulation in the sense of like a computer,
Mm-hmm.
but just like some sort of frequency
Yeah,
that we're tuned into.
I kind of agree.
And
I think if the earth is all that there is, that it exists almost inside of God, or because of God. And I don't think anymore about what's outside of it. If somebody told me what's 50 million miles that way, I'd laugh. I think that's funny.
yeah,
And then I think what science has done is made everything materialistic. And so they have to, they can't just say the earth is all there is. That doesn't make sense in the natural world. So they have to say the earth is a sphere, and it's one of many, and it flies through space, and then they have to do their mathematics until it works out. But I think they try and push that idea to make everything seem very material, and then it gives logical reasoning to maybe not believe in a creator anymore. If everything science said was actually true and they had worked it all out, then I could see saying, well, maybe there is no need for a creator, even though what they're saying is not true and it doesn't even add up, simply because there's never, I mean, crash a 747 jet into the ground a trillion times and it's never going to make anything. It's going to make a mess, period. Whereas we're supposed to believe that there was some explosion in space that created everything. Everything that there is logically created from an explosion, which we just know doesn't happen. So to me, it's not even, and same thing with evolution. Evolution just doesn't happen. There's no species going to other species. It just is not a logical, scientific explanation. And yet it is mandatory that you teach it in colleges. So, I mean, these kind of things led me to go, wait a second, there's a clear direction here, or like a narrative.
Yeah, there's definitely things in the world that you could look at and say, wow, there's definitely a relation between it. Like if you look at not a rabbit, but a hare, the hare, like the jackrabbit or whatever,
Right.
You can actually look at it and say, that looks like an overgrown rat or something like that.
Sure.
Like there's some sort of relation there. Or there's other animals that kind of have a certain resemblance. You could see a giraffe and a camel, how it kind of has a similar face. The hoof creatures kind of look similar. A lot of creationists would say that they have some sort of relation in the sense of a variation of a kind. And
right.
I don't really.
But there's if hippos had come from something else, then there would be some sort of pattern of getting to a hippo.
Yeah, there's no
transitional forms. There's no, and then
metamorphosis, I think, is one of the things that debunks evolution, because
crazy.
Look at it. I mean, you have a caterpillar that comes from an egg, and then the caterpillar has a metamorphosis, and it literally changes the whole, its whole.
But that's the same species. This is so weird.
Yeah, so I don't know how you can transition from one species to another within a lifetime. It just doesn't make any sense from an evolution perspective. So,
right. But again, it's like, imagine that we had, for example, a baby or a puppy, like a puppy bulldog or something that dies, and then it also had its father with him, and it died. And then you picture 200 years from now, people are digging bones and they find these two bones. They can actually start to say, oh, maybe this animal evolved into this one. Like, you wouldn't know that it's just a baby puppy and then a bigger dog or anything like that. Like they're just making assumptions of, like, I think that they one time had to cut back their dinosaur numbers from a third. They'd go down to a third because they had assumed, they never even thought about babies. Like, they were thinking, oh, this is a little dinosaur, this big, and then they realized, oh wait, this is probably the same one as that one, and so they had to rewind the whole thing.
Yeah, they change kind of shape or whatever over their lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and like you said, how would they ever do that if you were to dig things up and you found a caterpillar versus a butterfly? You would never put those as the same species.
I'm going to interview this guy that's actually an archaeologist in a couple weeks from now.
What's his name?
Joe Taylor.
Oh, okay. No, I know a guy named Trevor.
He's kind of more of a fringe archaeologist. He gets into the elongated skulls. He actually makes casts for things, and like, he actually is known for being like standing next to this drawing of a giant, and there's a femur bone that's like up above his head.
Oh, I've seen
and
that.
He's standing at the knee level. So he suggests that's a 18 or 24 foot
that's
skeleton.
Awesome. Yeah, because ask me about this one thing for me, because it's the one thing that bothers me the most and why I don't believe in dinosaurs. Well, I don't believe in them being ancient, but I mean, as far as big
dragons,
I believe that. Yeah, it could be dragons too. But ask him about the fact that there was these 10 PhD scientists who had discovered or uncovered a T-Rex, and so they sent all the bones in to be tested. And so they got sent back, and they came back in like 12,000 to 15,000 years. And then they said, oh, this is great, these are T-Rex bones. Well, as soon as they said that, the whole science community turned on them. They weren't allowed to submit anything to the lab anymore. The lab
Actually, I think that was a
was
female that was in charge of
it
the
was
dig
after
or
her.
whatever.
It was after her. I
Oh,
know the one you're talking about, the
oh,
one that works with Horner, Jack Horner.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Right. This was after. It was like a 10 person group, and they, basically had their paper dismissed, and they got removed from this conference that they were supposed to speak at, and they were told they were never allowed to submit anything again. And it's because if you're going to mail in dinosaur bones to a lab, you have to tell them that they're dinosaur bones. Why? Because they press a little button on their machine.
So they can have a bias when they're going into it.
Right. So then I'm sure there's a certain type of test for 67 million years or older that they press a button, and then the machine does its analyzing and gives you a date. But to know that you could just give those same bones and they can be carbon dated at 12,000 years is hilarious, because it kind of destroys their whole. And this is what happens with science. Like, you cannot find a dinosaur bone that would be dated at 30 million years old, even though technically it should be okay to find, but they've already set it up so it's impossible. Meaning, if you have a dinosaur bone, it goes into a machine that is only outputs 67 million years or 300 million years. Has to be between those numbers, because it's already been set by them. So you can
the thing that bugs me about the radiometric dating is because they have a lot of assumptions.
Of course, you have to assume the Earth has always been the same.
And exactly, like they have tested amber bubbles that show that there was a much denser oxygen density, even thousands of years ago.
They've tested lavas. It's come out of the volcano. It solidifies. They test and it comes back 4 million years, but it was just made. We just saw it. So there's definitely all their dating.
So we have a common ground there. I mean, I definitely believe that there is evidence of intelligence behind our design, and so the question is,
and I think the Earth is shorter. It's not been here as long as they say either.
Yeah, and again, I used to be the guy that like freaked out if somebody said that the Earth is over 6,000 years old. I used to be, but now I'm like, I don't know if it matters as much to me.
Yeah,
what it comes down to is, people are trying to fit like something into a puzzle that is shaped like a Bible, and and so but what I've actually, let me just tell you, one of the most awesome interviews I've ever done was with Apocryphile 1970. Now, I don't know if you know who that is, but he was the first guy to read the Book of Enoch on an audio recording on YouTube.
Oh, cool!
And he actually had like millions of views on that one. But his name's Robert Farrell, and now he gets into the Apocrypha type stuff a lot, and he got me thinking outside of my box. I'll tell you that right now. He basically talked about everything from kind of a symbolic meaning of everything pretty much in the Bible, and how it is mythical in the sense of everything is said from a perspective to gain meaning out of it. And so now it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not inspired, whether it's true or not. I mean, some of it is true. For sure, it's true.
For sure.
Because there's a lot of historicity. The historicity of the Bible is accurate. When it comes to locations and the actual existence.
Not all of it, but some of it, yes, for sure.
Yeah. So like, and again, you can't necessarily say it doesn't exist, because they say Troy didn't exist until they unearthed it later.
It's just sometimes it's very easy to create like evidence if you're not careful, right? So somebody says like, so in one of my videos recently, I was showing that the two gospels have a different genealogy of Jesus. They both have a different name listed for the grandfather of Jesus. The father of Joseph was in one gospel Heli and in another gospel Jacob. And the person responded to me and said, oh, that's because they were brothers. And so I'm like, what? So Mary's father and Joseph's father were brothers, so they were cousins. So I was kind of confused at that. And then I thought Joseph was much older than her. But they go on and on. And then I was like, well, where'd you get this from? Where's this information from? And they give me a link to it. So I go to this link and it's like a blog. Somebody's writing, talking about, and I'm like, okay, that's not evidence of, what you're saying, just because somebody wrote a blog saying that they were, so I feel like a lot of people will go to this kind of, oh, there's this person who says this about it, and they've adopted that as being proof in some way. It's like, well, no, not really. I mean, the Bible just doesn't tell us, it doesn't mention anybody else besides those two people. And then I heard somebody else say, oh, well, it's because this gospel was trying to convince the Jews, and this gospel was trying to convince. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, that's exactly the problem, is that you sound like what you're saying is that they were writing a story for some certain people, trying to get them to believe in things. So they're like, oh, so the Jews wanted to see that he came from David's line, but somebody else would have wanted to see it came from Mary's line. And so the Gentiles,
basically, it's the Gentiles versus the Jews.
Right. But I mean, as far as the book being divine, that's my issue with it. Right.
Yeah.
It's just because because everybody will say, well, what do you mean you don't believe in the Bible? The Bible's true. It's got all these historical facts in it. I'm like, yes, I didn't say it didn't have historical facts. I'm not saying it's not true, but whether or not it's divine is very important, because if it's not, then it's no different than an Eckhart Tolle book, which, now granted, this is older, so it's got obviously and I even say that it's, one of the greatest books ever written, if not the greatest book ever written, but it's also telling us who God is, right? And so that's where I started to have a problem, is the more I kept reading through this, I couldn't make excuses anymore for certain actions that God did.
Right? Yeah. So you say you kind of branched over from the Jesuit perspective early on. Now,
I Jesuit high school, yes.
Well, yeah. So I had a customer once that I was like working on their appliance or whatever. And I started talking religion with them, and they were devout Catholics. So they ended up giving me their Catholic Bible. And I thought it was interesting how many different books there are in the Catholic Bible.
Yeah, it ends differently too. The Old Testament ends differently than the Christian Bible.
Yeah, and there's an extra chapter in Daniel. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that are different about it. And I've kind of, I've taken a step back in a lot of ways from my early belief systems, and started looking at, like, I don't really look at the Bible like it's a book anymore. It's just a library. I mean, there's different books out there that I believe should have been included. There's other books that I don't know if they should have been included, like the Song of Solomon. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's relevant.
No, there's some things in there that are just said that you're like, oh, that doesn't need to be said. That's all. It just seemed like they added in. But for me, I mean, I guess that what it comes down to is, if we can, like you said, so if we don't take it as completely divine and every word is perfect, which is what I have a problem with Christians who believe that every word is God inspired and is perfect and can't be.
It's inerrancy.
Right. I would rather be honest and have people say, let's look at the book, and if there's something great in there, Jesus's words or things like that, and we go, this is a great way to live, let's all, great. And then the things that are bad, let's say these are bad. And the problem that I'm finding is that Christians can't say any part of the Bible is bad. They even go one step further. They make excuses for why it's okay. So what I've just found out this last 2 weeks is they'll go real far. They'll go, the guy told me yesterday that God is not God because he's moral, that he's moral because he's God. So what that's saying is that God can do anything.
He sets a standard. He sets the standard for morality.
Well, yeah, but no, we're not allowed to.
But he doesn't operate from that standard.
Yeah, it's like we were given our morality. To me, I think that we all have the same morals deep inside of us. Now, whether you in your growing up have kind of cheated on some of those, or you've erased some of those, that's something.
There's
separate.
Nature and nurture involved in that. I mean, there's. Right. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that when it comes to certain things, I would hope that we would have. I kept reading. There's a line, I forgot if it's Deuteronomy or something, I could look it up, where it starts out with God saying, here are the rules for a father who's going to sell his daughter into slavery. Now, right there, I'm able to say that doesn't seem like God talking. Seems like somebody speaking on behalf of God or pretending that they're God. But I said, to me, no creator would ever say, here's how you sell your daughter into slavery. If he does say that, then he's not a good teacher, not a good father. And people will say, oh, you can't make judgments about God. You don't understand God. You can't say that. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. I can, because God, if he created me with a certain set of morals, then he would understand that I would hold him to the same moral standard. He can't be like, oh, I'm going to give them this morality, but then I'm going to do things outside of that and they won't even worry about it. No, he would know, oh, if I do these things, they're going to say that's not moral. So to me, there's no way that God would be this immoral character that he is in the Bible and expect worship for it.
What do you think? I want to answer that, but I want to ask what you think of like Odin, or the Vikings, like, and their perspective, because it's honorable to kill people, and it's honorable to die for your cause or whatever. I mean, I guess you could say the same for Christianity, but a lot of people might look at the Vikings and say, "Oh, the Vikings are pretty cool. They're warriors or whatever."
Right.
And they don't really look at them like they're,
But the Vikings are not our father that we're supposed to worship.
Yeah, well, Odin probably could be if you're if you're part of that religion.
Sure. And I guess so, like, just to give you one book of the Bible and this is the one that started it for me, because this is the one that I said, oh, clearly we know God didn't write the Bible, is Romans 13. To me, it's without a doubt the one book that anybody can read and say, oh, then God didn't write that or have anything to do with it, because it literally says that all governments are put in place by God, and to go against the government is to go against God.
Yeah.
So no matter, and then people will make all the excuses in the world. Oh, it was talking about a time in the past, or it's talking about a different government. It says, no, read the words. The words clearly say all governments are placed by God. And if you go against the government, then you go against God. And it says, the government's job is to do God's work continuously, to do the good for you. And if the only way you should be fearful of them is if you're bad. If you're good, you should never fear your government, because they're there to be God's stewards and to attend to your needs all times. It just is clearly written by government, clearly. Mm-hmm. So to me, God didn't write that. He would never write that or anything close to it. They would add something like, and if your government turns tyrannical or begins to oppress the people, you have every right to fight back. You have every right to, abolish it, whatever. It doesn't say anything like that. It's just, and then it even says things like, so this is why you pay taxes. So remember to pay taxes when taxes are due. It's like, what? God didn't tell me that I need to pay taxes to the government.
Give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yeah, that's what Jesus said. But this is even more blatant to say, pay taxes when taxes are due. And then I said, well, what if tomorrow the government came down and said a new tax, 98% income tax? Well, the Bible says that we are to pay taxes when taxes are due, because the government's put here to, it doesn't say anything about unless they charge you too much, or which is what, if you were really writing a guidebook for humanity, you would say. And Christians will just make excuses for it and say, oh, but he was actually talking about a government in the past. Like, then why doesn't it say that? Where does it say that? It's saying all governments are placed there by God, and to go against the government is to go against God. So to me, the government wrote that. It's the only person in the world who would ever write something that stupid, that, oh, well, the government's here to do God's work. But we have to think this book was used as a control mechanism in the past. And so if you're going to control a bunch of people, the best way to do that would be to say in there that if you're the government, you want the book to say that God put all governments in charge, and you need to attend.
Do you think it was like the Council of Nicaea or something that established that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing,
or whatever.
Unfortunately, when you get into history too much with me, it's hard to bank on anything, because I think we've been lied to so much, and it's so easy to fake everything from
or King James, I guess, because there's a lot of government systems involved in the Bible, obviously. And which I can't really say that I disagree with you in the sense that I mean, what if let's just open my brain and let it fall off for a second and say that I actually feel like there's maybe something in the Bible that threw me for a loop. And no, it's not a maybe. The fact that Jesus turned 33 and then died made me think like that's the age of the when you graduate, the Freemasons or whatever.
Right, 33rd degree.
And, so I think that there's some sort of symbology there in some ways. Like there's something about the age 33 where you're no longer adolescent in your brain, I guess, and you're actually now not just an adult, but you actually don't think like a child anymore, in my opinion. And I think that maybe there's some sort of correlation there. I'm not sure. And maybe in that sense, maybe it sounds like it could have been a story.
Well, and the other part is, I mean, you've never met Jesus, and you've never met anyone that wrote any of the stories about Jesus.
I've never met Josephus, but I've seen the writings of Josephus that talk about the existence of Jesus, but he doesn't say anything about the Bible or how Jesus is written about.
We also don't know who Josephus was. We didn't meet him or the people who wrote about him. So what I started to realize is that there's no way, zero chance, God has made something that our salvation is dependent on that we have no way to verify. There's zero way. Nobody can say that they know for a fact that the Bible was written when they say it was. We don't even have the original manuscript for one book. Every single book is been copied off of the original manuscript, which I'm not saying that makes it false. It's just if we have that little of evidence for it, then it can't be dependent on your salvation. Imagine you're a creator and you've created a bunch of little beings and you're going to judge them at the end of their lives. You would never require them to believe in something that they have no evidence for besides a book. And the book says things that are wholly impossible, like man walking on water, man rising from the dead, turning water into wine, healing the sick with your spit, or healing the blind with your spit. So there's so many things in there that sound great. They sound great, but it sounds like a storybook. And it sounds like things that are not true in the fact that we don't see it today, right? A virgin having a baby. So if any virgin came forward today and said they're pregnant, every single person in the world would call them a liar and say it's impossible.
It sounds like an alien abduction, but
right, or some sort of rape, alien rape. So I mean, and to me, the more I started looking into, and then there's, as a Catholic, I saw glaring problems, like the fact of I was an altar boy till I was like 14, and I would always carry the cross into church. I mean, here's a young boy carrying a huge 8-foot wooden cross with Jesus Christ hung and dead on it. And how could that be? Why would anybody ever think that that is a good symbol? Like if the highlight of Christianity is Christ rising, then we should be wearing around our necks like a little tomb that you peel the rock back or something and he like comes out or something. You would never wear his death scene.
You know, I honestly, I feel like a lot of that is a symbol in the sense that, you know, so say that my whole foundation is based out of the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay.
So are you familiar with the Sermon on the Mount? It basically, let's just say Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 7. And it basically talks about, you know, your, like the Beatitudes, like it's telling you how to be, like how you're supposed to operate in this life we're in, and how you're supposed to treat others. And, you know, and a lot of people say it's not about works, but honestly, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I've actually seen in the Bible is about performance. And, you know, and you say it's a control thing, but.
Well, isn't it? Let's look at the Sermon on the Mount real quick. So, if things are just said that sound good, then that would be a sign of us possibly being tricked. Because if you think about it, if there's no actual proof of what is being said, then couldn't it be a hopeful wish? Like, for instance, it says, you know, those who are poor in spirit will inherit the kingdom of God. Okay, great. But that's not proven. That's just words. Okay, great. But it makes me hopeful. Then it says, blessed are those who mourn, they will be comforted. Okay, well, my mom died recently. I'm mourning pretty hard. It sucks that she's gone. I hope that I'm comforted, but I haven't been yet. Blessed are the meek who will inherit the earth. It's a great thing to say. However, the meek are not inheriting the earth. The earth is inherited right now by the rich and powerful and the elite, and the meek are getting trampled on and locked in their homes and told they're not allowed to travel because they didn't get a vaccine or whatever. So the ones who hunger or thirst, everything that's being said is a very glittering generality, and it's a great thing to say, but it's not been proven yet. So to me, you can't give people hope. Imagine if I told you, like, oh, give me all your money, Charlie, because guess what? And when you die, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of in the afterlife. The more money you give me today, I'm going to multiply that 10 times in the afterlife, how much you're going to get from me. You would call me crazy. You're not going to give me any money for that. Yet it's kind of what Jesus is doing. Jesus wants a bunch of things from you. He says you have to love him more than you do your family. You have to love Jesus more than your kids, love Jesus more than your mom and dad. And then, or you can't go with him or whatever. But then his promise is something that you can't see yet. Now, granted, that could be Christians believe, well, that's faith. You have to have faith, right? If we had those things proven, then of course we wouldn't have to have faith to have them. So my problem with that is still, okay, well, then we better all really hope that those things are correct. Now, what I noticed is all the things that Jesus said, don't store things here on earth because your riches will be great in heaven. Don't, it's harder for a rich man to go through an eye of a needle than it is to go into heaven. You know, all these things. So
yeah, all that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you look at the world, you have the elite running around taking every bit of money. They take every money from every person. They are becoming richer and richer and more powerful. Like 1%, the top 1% has 50% of the money, which is insane to think about. Just the top 1% of people have 50% of the total amount of money. So really everything that they're saying in the Bible, the meek will inherit the earth. Okay, well, the meek get trampled on while the elite get to run the earth. And
well, I think it's all, a lot of it's the content of the heart. It's not necessarily the, physical aspects of it. I mean,
Jesus tells you if somebody asks for your jacket, give them 2. If somebody asks for your pants, give them your pants and your shoes. The problem with that is that person in real life would be on the streets in a month. That is not the way to live your life. If somebody asks me on the street to use my car, I'm like, oh, here's 2. And then they're like, oh, and now I need to use this. Okay, here's 2. Before I know it, I would have nothing. So that's not a smart thing to do. And if people think, well, I want to do those things because Jesus said I would go to heaven and sit with him. Okay, great. But you have no proof that that is the end result. You can have faith that you think that is, but we would have to have some sort of signs of that. And to me, when you got Jesus saying he'd be back quickly, he would be returning quickly. And then you've got Jesus doing this 180 of, he says, love your neighbor, love your enemy, turn the other cheek. But then we're told Jesus is coming back to kill all his enemies, which is what I thought we were loving enemies. Now we're killing them. So there's like this huge, I don't know if I was reading the other night that Revelation chapter 2, where Jesus says he'll kill that lady's children. And to me, I don't want my savior to be somebody who has threatened to kill a woman's children because of food that she ate. So there's a problem to me that we're treating Jesus like he's great and he's got all these wonderful things he said. And don't get me wrong. There's some things Jesus said that are fantastic. I believe in his 2 commandments, which are love your neighbor and love God. So I agree with those. But other things that he says, I don't agree with. And what I reached a conclusion of is that I don't know that he even said those. So it's not fair.
It was just another author that wrote about.
Right. John wrote that, right? John wrote Revelation, but he's writing on behalf. Jesus is actually the one speaking, but we know John wrote it. Jesus didn't write it. So again, it comes down to, I don't know who even wrote that. I don't know if Jesus said any words. I don't know if Jesus said words, some things that are in the Bible, some things that aren't. I don't know. So how could God require that of me to believe that and put my entire life on the line? Basically, my entire salvation is dependent on me believing in something. So to me, I started to look at it and I said, wait a second, if I was God and I created people, I would never want to reward those who blindly believed in a book with no evidence. That to me is the opposite of what I would want. So I started thinking, I think that's part of the test. Part of the test is, are people capable of
outside of the box?
Right. Or having their own brain enough to look at things and say, no, this doesn't add up. Or that's why I think that the Old Testament God is not worthy of worship. He has no redeeming factors. There's nothing besides him being the creator. Don't get me wrong. The guy in the Bible created the earth, but there's so many things that he did wrong that people should not have a problem calling out and saying, well, that's weird. Why would he do that? Instead, they double down. Like when they say, oh, well, he needed to have a blood sacrifice to forgive our sins. It's like, hold on. You're talking about God, right? Yes. Okay. Well, God, why does he need to have a blood sacrifice? What you're saying is that God now,
that goes way beyond Christianity. That's actually that goes to like the Mayans and
right,
Aztecs,
but we know that that's ancient belief. That's ancient understanding. It's not
burning on sacrificing on an altar and burning it.
Right. So we don't do that anymore, right? So to me, it's like clearly the Bible's just written by men who believed in that. And then I started realizing that everybody who believes in God. So you've got the Vedics, the Indians who believe in Shiva, and you've got Jehovah, and you've got Yahweh, and you've got the Native Americans believe in the river god and the sun god. You got Quetzalcoatl for the Mayans. And then I started thinking, you know what? They're all talking about the same being. That every culture on earth knows that there's a creator, knows that there's a God. And each one of them constructed a story to tell people about who they thought God was. So the Hebrews, who were obviously going around trying to, being enslaved, trying to take over other people's land, came up with their God of YHVH or whatever. And that was their idea of God. How much of it is true? I think very little. But they were able to use that story to kind of control their people and move them through and make sure that they were always like fighting on behalf of the Jews because God's going to give you this land of milk and honey. But then you look at the Native Americans, they had a belief in God. Their God was the sun god, and they did a little dance and they got plants to grow. So everybody's got their opinion of God. They just fabricated it differently, right? So to me, it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, we have to believe that the actual God, YHVH or whatever, decided to write a book, but he went to a little tiny section of Jerusalem and told some people there to write it down and then just say, go pass it out, which is ridiculous. Why would God do that? Why wouldn't God tell somebody, the Native Americans that were here? Why wouldn't he go down to South America and tell some people down there? To just think he just gave one book to one person is like spread this around. And then you have people like in China, they have a very difficult time getting the Bible because it's outlawed there. So does God even care about the Chinese? And then people will say, oh, well, those people automatically go to heaven because they didn't get a chance to see the Bible. But that's dumb. That's just
I got to just tell you right now, I don't really, based on the Bible, I've actually extrapolated that heaven is just a figurative thing. It's not, and hell too.
Yes. Hell's not even in the Bible, really. Truly.
Well, it is in the sense that you're talking about Hades or Gehenna, or
which means grave,
Sheol. Right? Yeah, they're all interpreted as the word hell. Now, all of them are actually so heaven, when it's talking about the streets of gold and the pearly gates and things like that, that's actually the New Jerusalem. Correct. And it actually is something that descends from the heavens down onto the earth. Correct. So what they're saying is that heaven comes from the sky down to the earth, and
but Jesus said that the kingdom of God is inside you.
Yeah, so that's the thing is I feel like I don't know if you ever heard of the channel Global Witness, but it's this guy. I don't know. I forget his background. I think he came from like the movie industry. He was like a producer or something. But he really just broke away from that whole world and started becoming a Bible researcher and all this other stuff. And now he's kind of like Gnostic in a way, but he's also, he believes that we are Christ, and Christ is the office of the same office that Jesus operated from, like a role, and that
Christ consciousness or
I
think the same thing. I mean, I think that Jesus is no different than you or I. I mean, I think that he was a son of God, just like we're a son of God. And I think that he was probably the first one who came speaking against some of the Old Testament because he was picking things on the Sabbath and doing things that clearly were said. This is why the whole idea of Jesus is the creator or Jesus created the world cannot be true, because that God made a 180-degree change. He went from punishing people, killing their children, putting
but what I was going to say about Global Witness is he actually says that God Yahweh is actually the devil. And
I've heard that too, but that's so if that's true though, then
but it says it right in the Bible that God it actually you know what I'm talking about.
It does.
So now I'm not saying that see, that's one of the recent things that kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, holy crap. And a lot of people that follow my channel, they know that I'm like, I like to get into these topics. I like to contrast religions.
Let me just like put a niche on that. Can't we just say that if that is true, then it's not written by God and therefore dismiss it? That's how I can look. I can just erase things. Like, for instance, the people who say, oh, the God of the Old Testament is Satan. I'm like, well, time out then. Then it's not a divine book, divine as far as the creator wrote it. Therefore, anything in there, I can read and take what I want, but it's certainly not something that we need to put a lot of fascination into.
Well, yeah. So like the nature versus nurture thing. I mean, maybe the thing that we are instilled with as we're coming up into this world, we have a certain knowledge, and in some ways we can actually download things for
totally.
obviously.
I mean, if you start, I mean, the last week, or at least last Friday night, was it last night? Saturday night. I've started to really explore that idea. I think that we've been hidden. I was talking about home field advantage in sports, that we just all assume that that's a fact, and we all know.
I like that analogy, actually.
But there's a reason why the home team, and I think it's because, and then somebody said, oh, well, it doesn't happen in this. I said, yeah, because you know what? The home fans can also feel like they have no chance, in which case you're going to be hurting the team. But what I kind of realized is we have an extreme amount of power being a piece of, I believe we're pieces of God. God can separate himself out into billions of little gods. They're little tiny bits of, and we have the same morality, and we are a soul, but the soul is God. And then when we ever attain, permanent bliss, I guess you would call it, or enlightenment, some people call it, then you return to the one. The
source or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So we are not like separated from God. We are God. We're just a small little piece. So people always say to me, "Oh, you're trying to be like God." I'm like,
well,
no, God.
You actually get that from near-death experiences,
right?
I mean, seriously.
And what you said earlier was kind of exactly my opinion. You said things like, "Oh, and then you go and you return, it's all bliss." Well, that's what God would be. God is all bliss. So, if God is all bliss, he cannot become not all bliss, right? But what he can do is separate himself out into as many little pieces as he wants, and have those pieces of him go out and experience something less than blissful. And if we are parts of God, let's say that we also we never knew that there was a beginning and an end. We don't even know what that means, because you would be eternal. So possibly we wanted also to come in here and play this game where there's a beginning and an end, and we don't know it, because if you know it, then you're not really playing for real, because it's not real. You don't really have a beginning and an end. But we don't know it. Our soul is kind of like what you would call camouflaged, right? Or shrouded. It's taking that veil off and realizing that you are eternal, and that's what Jesus was saying. Jesus was saying, "I am one with the Father."
Right? He said, "I knew you before the foundation of the earth."
Which is, maybe that's true for all of us, meaning that we all were here before the foundation. Like, we all have no beginning and no end, but we don't know that here.
I want to keep hashing out the Bible thing, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, and I'll just be honest with you. I can't reach you where you're at. I'm not necessarily hoping to, as much as I am. Maybe I can plant a seed. Who knows? But the bottom line is, I feel like,
let's just start with Romans 13, and you tell me how would you possibly rationalize that in your mind? How could you not admit right after reading that, okay, God didn't write that? Because to me, that's where I would hope people would be able to make concessions when concessions are needed. Like, if somebody tells me, "What do you think of this line in the Bible?" and I read it and it's a good line, I'm going to say, "It's a good line. I like it. It's well written," or something like that. But I feel like when you do the same thing to Christians and you say, because I mean, which one are you looking at, the KJV or?
Well, initially I'm looking at ESV, but
what's it say?
Well, so let me just say that Romans is written by Paul.
Okay.
And
which is still supposed to be inspired by God, right? Still.
Yeah, Paul was one of the more controversial when it comes to. I'm not trying to justify one way or the other, but I'm just saying.
But no matter how controversial, if we are to believe the book is divine, then God is authored. He's approved what's being said.
Right? I'm not arguing for inerrancy or whatever. I actually feel like inspiration might come through how a seed is watered. So,
but we're all inspired, right?
So the analogy or the parable that talks about the seeds that are thrown into the soil, and some of the soil is moist and tender and whatever, and there's other soil that's dry and it's blown away over time and it just dies. Mm-hmm. And I actually look at, like, the fertile soil depends on your mind and your philosophy. So, or even the dry, desolate soil has to do with how you look at it. So, so if you're saying, I'm only getting, negative out of what I'm reading, which I have actually considered a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, like the Genesis 6. I heard somebody talking to you on your calling thing or whatever on the Yahweh, like, is Yahweh worthy of worship? And they were basically saying that you have to look through the filter of Genesis chapter 6, which is Steve Quayle calls it the Rosetta Stone of how to interpret the scriptures. And that is that everything is, corrupted. The corrupted seed happens. Sorry, I got an echo. The corrupted seed basically takes place from the Nephilim, and it is corrupted all the way up until the flood, basically, and even after. So what they're saying, anytime you corrupt God's creation, like with the chimera, there's a lot of stuff out there that, like the legends of these chimera and the giants and all these different things, which the Bible is explicitly saying that it's a corrupted seed. And now Jesus also says that many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. Now, I say that, maybe there is corruption in the Bible.
Right.
Or maybe there is corruption somewhere. But
we also there was no punctuation, right? So just think for yourself real quick. Jesus said many would be coming in his name. Well, to me, that means Christians saying he was the Christ. Don't be led astray. So again, with no punctuation, you can really take, this is why God wouldn't write words on paper and call that his word and give it to people, because words on paper take in many different ways.
That's what Global Witness says. He says it's not many will come to me saying or many will come, like someone saying that they're the Christ and they'll deceive many. He's actually saying many will say that I am the Christ.
Correct.
And will deceive many. And now,
see, this is my feeling real quick.
My
idea of Jesus. I think Jesus came. I think Jesus spoke against the Old Testament God. I think that's why he said, no man has seen God's face. No man has heard his voice, when clearly people in the Old Testament saw his face and heard his voice. And he says, the kingdom of God is inside you. So I think there's enough things said that tell me that he was. And then he says the Sabbath wasn't made for
man. It was man was for the other way around.
Other way around, yeah. It's made for man, not this, man for the Sabbath. So, but those things are completely different than the other God, who they found a man working on the Sabbath and they took him to God and God said, stone him to death. So that's not the same person as Jesus, who then is working in the field and then says, oh, the Sabbath. So completely different people. So this is what I've noticed with Christianity, is because they have to play all this games of saying it's inerrant, they have to constantly change their stories, and it becomes so convoluted. It's a disaster. Like, is God 3 in 1? Was Jesus the creator? Like, they don't even know anymore because it's gotten to be so convoluted. God says he's never changes. That's what he says in the Old Testament. I'm God, my ways never change. Yet Jesus is 100.
Who's to say they ever had it right in the first place?
Right. But Jesus had it 180 degrees differently. I mean, he was completely different than the God of the Old Testament, like a real difference. There's the other guy was killing.
So let me just say that, the Trinity is, a very popular view. But when I actually started looking at the scripture, I started realizing that the Trinity actually was just their way of interpreting something different than I look at. I actually, what's the fourth part of the quadrinity? I don't even know what you want to call it. The burning bush. It's not, the Holy Spirit. It's not God the Father, and it's not Jesus. So, but it does say that God comes in the form of a burning bush.
What? Angel of death, I think, is another one. God sent his angel of death or something. It's like,
well, that's an angel, but I don't know. I mean, God. So the thing is, God manifests. God, that's what God is. God, however God manifests. And so, God could manifest in the form of not necessarily me, but maybe God manifests through me,
right?
Or God, uses me as a conduit. And I always talk about this. You know,
and so what you're saying is inspired by God, and that's okay with me if you said that, because I do believe we're all inspired by God. But what I don't believe is you can't take what your words are, write them in a book, and then give them to me and say, "Here's the words of God. You are to believe this." That would be wrong.
And that goes back to what you're saying about you can't put your trust in a man or their interpretation.
Unless you found a man that was always honest to you and everything that they said was honest, and you want to start to believe them a little bit, and over time you're just noticing that they never lied to you. That's the kind of person you might want to start to believe in. But when you catch people lying and deceiving, and then we know what most men are up to, they're trying to get one over on you, whether it's a scam or some sort of business opportunity, or there's just not a, I mean, I've seen recently, and maybe you feel differently, I can't think of one male role model, which is pathetic. There's 4 billion of us, and I can't think of one. So that kind of tells you what kind of people we have here, where I can't even think of one man that I'd be like, oh, I want to be like him. I want to, that's who I want to be like. There's just not one. So to me, it's like a sign that science believes all these, the giants of, you know, Newton and Galileo and these stories they tell about them. And then religion has these guys that they all back, Jesus and Abraham and Moses and Noah, David, and, you know, so Muhammad, if you're an Islamist. So to me, all those men, I mean, then you start looking at it and you're like, well, let me look into Muhammad, because Gabriel gave him a book to read or to write, but he couldn't write. He married a 6-year-old, had sex with her when she was 9 years old. It's like, that's who God chose to give his word to. So all these stories seem so fantastical, and you have to actually have faith in the people that wrote them. So when it comes to the Bible, we don't know who wrote all those books. Now, when we're told Moses, none of us know him. Even the New Testament, we're told people that wrote them, but even the gospel writers, they're like, well, that's not really their names. That was added after the fact. They didn't have names originally. It's like, it gets real to the point where you're like, how could God require this of me? Right? Like, to believe that a man can be born of a virgin or a child can come from a virgin is, based on evidence, a ridiculous belief, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, it's not scientific, that's for sure.
But okay, let's not even go with scientific. If there's something that somebody says happens that you've never seen happen, and
well, I mean, at face value, I think, well, she's probably lying. She probably slept with the neighbor, you know,
right, or was raped and didn't want to tell anybody, or whatever, right? So exactly. So how could God depend on your salvation? Depends on you believing that. To me, that's an insane belief for us to.
Yeah, and that Joseph had a dream,
right?
Which I want to actually just quickly side note. I had a dream that came to fruition, and it was about my second born son.
Really?
Yeah, and it was something simple. I mean, maybe I was just reading the signs. My wife, she was kind of getting uppity with me. It's like she must be pregnant, you know. But no, this is it came to me in a dream that I was telling my wife that she had a positive pregnancy test,
mm-hmm.
And that and I didn't know if it was going to be a boy or whatever. But in my dream, I woke up from the dream saying, "Hey, honey, I think you should take a pregnancy test, because I actually, you know, I had a dream that you're pregnant." And so she ended up dismissing it, because she's like, "I don't want to get my hopes up, you know." But then she ended up a couple days later, actually, you know, took a pregnancy test without telling me, and she had a positive test that morning. And it was like 7 a.m. She's like, Charlie, wake up right now. And so I was
now,
like,
she wasn't a virgin, was she? Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, our second son, she's still a virgin.
I'd start asking some questions of her.
She's like, no, I don't know why they have longer and darker, whatever. It's like me, myself, and Irene, or whatever.
Right.
But no, but I ended up getting up, and I'm like groggy, and she's like, "What is this?" And I look at it, and sure enough, it was a positive pregnancy test. So, I mean, some people might say that no, I was telling a story. So my wife just popped her head in here. She's like, "Did you just say my name?" So but yeah, I mean, somebody actually interviewed me based on that story because I made a video about it, and I actually felt like there was something to it. And I actually said that I felt like God gave me intuition, and
I believe that
me in a dream.
That can be true, especially if you kind of follow my line of thinking that you are God. And again, this is where people get very lost. Is they're like, well, I don't want to be haughty like that. Well, no, you can't inhabit my body, and you can't inhabit anybody else's. God can do that. So he's infinitely more impressive than you, but you are still God. So you still have the ability to have intuition, to have premonition. This is why when you are standing, you can tell somebody's looking at you from behind you. There's no scientific explanation for that. But if we understand the metaphysical, if we understand the super, that there is, it's a supernatural thing that we're able to have these kind of thoughts. If you don't believe it's possible, then it will never happen. And the way I word that is that picture, if God is a creator, the creative process must be a full thought about an item and it coming into fruition, right? It can't be like a hesitant thing. It can't be like I bet I can't create this, because then it wouldn't be created. Like, so our problem is we're very held back. We're very reserved. We don't want to ever say that we have premonition. We don't want to ever say that we're given some future event that might happen, because people don't believe that that's true. And so the same thing is true with the rice experiment. If you do the rice experiment, but you don't believe in it, so you're like, this is stupid, I'll mark this one hating, you're dumb, I love you. And you put them, and guess what? At the end of the month, the jars are going to look identical. And you're going to be like, that didn't work. Well, this is the problem with science, that science will never be able to prove that experiment is true. Number one, because you can't measure.
It all goes back to intention, like it's actual intention.
Yes. So what you're saying is like when you feel like God did give you some sort of advice for the future, or even give you some answer for the future, I believe that. And so we don't want to ever say like, oh, I'm not sure that happened, because then we're kind of naysaying it. And I think you can limit it happening again. Whereas if we kind of celebrate those things, and that's what I've been talking about, trying to bring people together. Because if you think about it, any of these big events, sporting events, even protests, even church services, that's where people have experiences like supernatural experiences. People at church have felt like the spirit is there, God is there. If you go to a baseball game and the whole home team is rooting for, and the team wins in the bottom of the ninth inning or whatever, it's a very surreal feeling. And I don't think we're giving that enough credit. And this is why I think the elite do what they do. They want us wasting our God powers on meaningless bullshit like baseball games. So they they know this is why they keep us separated: black versus white, red versus blue, left versus right. Everything is about keeping us separated, because the most scary thing to a group of evil people would be good people getting together, because our combo soul will be able to do whatever we want. The problem is we don't know that. And we're all kind of reserved, and we all kind of, and that's why they always want us looking outside of ourselves, right? So everything that we're told is, you need to go get a vaccine. You need to go to the doctor if you're sick. You need to go look in this book for the truth. You need to go get that guru. You need to go to this religion. Nobody ever just says, look inside yourself. Ask yourself those questions. Ask what's inside you, because to me, there's a reason for that. The only reason that they wouldn't want you looking inside is because that's the place to look. So you can almost kind of play everything that these guys do backwards to see the truth, because everything that they say is a lie. And so you could just take what they say. So where's the one place they don't ever want you looking? It's within yourself. What's the one thing that the news has never mentioned to get rid of COVID? They've never said anything about, they never told you to exercise. They never told you to eat healthy. They never told you to go outside and get some sun.
So, I've had videos deleted when I talk about like vitamin C and stuff like that.
So
it's
exactly.
like, are you freaking kidding me?
So the only thing that passes in today's world is that, oh, you've got to go to this other man who is so much smarter than you, and they've designed these great miracle potions. Whereas the one thing that is, and then now they laugh at your immune system, the thing that's got us through however many years you want to say humanity's been here. Now it's like, that's a joke. Natural immunity, what a joke. But it's like, no, that's what we should be using. So again, to me, it just seems like if you look at the world, it appears to me to be the world that you would see if there was an evil group of people who were trying in every way possible to control a much larger group of people. How do you control that group of people? Well, with TV, with movies, with education, by putting the lies that you want to tell in the education, because again, let's imagine that you and I are rich and powerful and just rude people. We would never get together and be like, how do we make kids smarter? How do we make them try and take us over and take our money and take our power and take our family's, position?
I feel like it's gotten worse though in the last like 5-10 years.
I think so. Oh, by far. Oh, I mean, I would have never guessed 10 years ago that what we're going through now would even be possible. There's no way. There's no way. But I also didn't realize how many people were fully asleep, meaning that they don't even think for themselves anymore. They don't want to. So it's almost like people now, like if you would have told me 10 years ago that, in 10 years, there'll be half the Americans will be against free speech. I'd be like, yeah, right. What the fuck are you talking about? That's what makes America. But now we've got half this country that
honestly, that's kind of the reason I pulled back a little bit with
I can see why
what I'm doing. I got kind of tired of it. All my videos, like every time I got to post something, I get a strike for a video from like a year ago or something.
Yeah,
and it's like, wait, it's like, are you kidding me? Every time I post anything now, I get a strike. Whether it's for that, it's not even for that video. It's for the video from like a year ago. And it just, I don't know. I just got tired of playing the YouTube game, and now I want to talk more about stuff that is not going to trigger the algorithm as much. Well, it's still going to trigger the algorithm, obviously. I just say FE now. I don't want to talk about it because the algorithm's going to get triggered and have that like Wikipedia thing underneath every video that I do. But I don't know. I figured out, and I'm gonna go dark on you, man. I'm gonna talk about something that is really just kind of rocking my world lately, and it pertains to near-death experiences, of course. One of the guys I interviewed, Brian Melvin, in fact, he might be the first interview that I actually did of a near-death experience, because he had a hell experience. And he was an atheist, that basically a militant atheist that was constantly trying to tear down, Christians particularly. And he died of this thing where anything out of body, let me just say out of body, that you can go and verify certain things, I think is interesting. So if you have an out of body experience, you can actually look at things and recount like certain things that are happening around your body. I think that actually gives some substance, or makes it more valid, I guess. But he ended up going to this dark realm where he ended up going through this path, and then he saw the light, and then he ended up going in front of the throne room of God where he was judged. And then he went to this dark. He was sent into what do you call it? Abraham's bosom, I guess, or something that was like hell, but it wasn't hell. It wasn't like hellfire. But he ended up meeting somebody there that he knew in his previous life. And it was a guy that he considered like just kind of a bad dude. Like he was not a good guy. But he was like, "Hey man, welcome to paradise." And but he was cast down into this like pit that was like, and when he got there, but then he actually saw through this guy's face, and he noticed it was like some purple reptilian type creature. And but he ended up being ushered down to this area where he was told, and I guess they came to realize that, and I say these entities that were ushering him to his final destination, said that he they basically started showing him pods, or like little things where people were actually in these like holodeck type rooms where they were actually being mind controlled and deceived. And these are actually their paradise situations, like in heaven, or hell, you might say. And so they're basically given their own form of hell. And and again, a lot of people might look at this like, oh, this guy was probably, just recounting some sort of dream that he had, right? But the thing that's interesting to me is that he'll he said he specifically remembered when he was coming out of his body that his dog was like yelping and licking his hand, and then he was going up up and through the ceiling. But as he was passing through the ceiling, he saw a fingerprint that was on the paint that was up in the corner where he couldn't really see it unless he was up high. So and then he went through the ceiling, which he had never actually been on his roof, and he found an AC that had a bandana thing wrapped around it, like a worker or somebody like before that. Mm-hmm. So he went back and verified these things, but he could be lying. Who knows?
That's a good story.
But so what I'm trying to get out of a lot of this stuff is like, why do these people have transformative life experience? So like after they die and then they come back, they literally transform their existence,
right?
And
you might call that born again, right?
Yeah.
But
so
good.
Well, I to wrap it up, I mean, he basically was suggesting that there is a lot of deception going into a near-death experience, and you have to actually be able to there's basically a conspiracy that is even vaster than this reality.
I think I've heard it, the one with the light, and they want to recycle your souls here, and they
that's kind of the I interviewed another guy that found me. He's like a big channel now, but he's called Forever Conscious Research Channel or whatever. Mm-hmm. Eric Dubé shouted him out like it was like really good research or whatever. But I'm still not fully on board with what he's saying because I feel like it really depends. Like I feel like there could be deception on the other side, but there also could be, maybe it's all the water stuff that you're like talking about how like how you die is how you create your own hell or heaven. And
I thought we judge ourselves, but
yeah, and I just feel like there's so much about it really is dependent on the life you're coming from, because there's different religions that people experience.
Let me just say this because this helped me a lot. So Rob Skiba, I don't know if you know Rob Skiba. So
I'm his convert, you might say, as far as
I had a lot of conversations with him, and he had said something one time where I was kind of trying to get him giving all these examples of why I didn't believe in God. And he said, let me tell you why I believe in God. And he went through this very good story about he was in like the worst part of his life, and then he wished to God to get the info he needed, and the Bible blew open. It was sitting on his passenger seat in his car. It blew open a certain page, and he grabbed it and pointed at a verse, and it happened to be this verse that said something that made him believe. So, okay, that's great. And then I've got a buddy who told me one time when he started hearing me say things anti-Christianity, he's like, dude, Jesus is real. Jesus is real. It's like, okay, how do you know that? And he said, because he came to me. He said, when I was in my worst time, I got on my knees in my bedroom, and Jesus came to me and told me things would be all right, and this and that. So I said, okay. And then I said, would you have thought it was weird if Muhammad came? And he's like, what? Like, well, when you were begging for Jesus to come, would you have thought it was weird if Muhammad came? And the reason I say that is because I've also talked to Muslims who tell me stories about Muhammad coming to them and the jinn, and that they're real. And they know that Islam is real because of the jinn and meeting Muhammad. So I'm like, okay. So I started to realize that if you talk to a Native American, they would tell you that they've had run-ins with the river god, or they've had run-ins with the sun god. So it's more that humans are capable of conjuring up anything. Really, if they believe it strong enough, they can.
So that's us manifesting.
Yes. So I believe I don't believe in Satan. However, I'm not dumb enough to go in my garage and paint a pentagram and put a bunch of candles out and read the Bible backwards, because I don't doubt that in that case I could conjure up Satan.
A Ouija board. Yeah.
Right. So I don't do those things. Right. So but I recognize then that everybody has these religious experiences, but they're all really dependent on your culture. Like nobody from China has ever had Jesus come to them if they did never known Jesus, and Jesus just shows up, oh, I'm Jesus. And
I don't know that I've heard Chinese people say something like that, but I have heard like Muslims say that they saw Jesus,
but they know who Jesus is, right? So it's not like this came out of the blue. They know who Jesus is. They believe in him as a
well, no, prophet. They actually don't look at Jesus like a prophet. They look at him. Well, maybe they do. But he's not on the same level as like Muhammad or something.
No, because Muhammad was last, and I think they just think Jesus was
And it's Isa, it's not Jesus. Yeah.
Good. There's no such thing as a J anyway, and even Christ, I think, is quite Roman. But so one thing I was going to say earlier is that if Jesus did come speaking against the God of the Old Testament, or at all, just saying like, nope, the kingdom of God is inside you, and tried to change anything, they would have done exactly what we see, which is hung him on a cross and then made a point. Like, imagine if really all these guys care about is control, then they would have been happy to kill Jesus, put him on a cross, call him God, and then write a book about him where he was very complacent. When the government went after him, did he fight the government? No, he didn't. He just let them hang him on a cross. So Jesus is exactly what the government wants of you. They want somebody who doesn't buck the trend, who doesn't get very angry. He doesn't fight back. He's just kind of quiet. And then he'll come and save you in the future. He'll take out all the evil in the future. That's what you would say if you were very evil people trying to take over the world. You would want people to believe that what they're doing is bad, so they're going to be punished. You would want people to believe that just be good and you won't get punished. And then in the end, somebody's going to come and take out all this evil, because the entire time they believe that, they're letting evil go. What does the end of the Bible say? The end of the Bible says, let evil be evil, let wicked be wicked. Yeah. Why would God and Jesus say that? Why would they want to let evil be evil and wicked be wicked? Because that's only what the evil ones would want. They want you to leave them alone. So if you look at the world, we've got an elite.
Well, can I say something to
Sure.
that? Like in Romans, it says, that you'll be given over to a reprobate heart and mind. And so if you can't be reached, you're going to be sealed off or given over to a reprobate.
What do you mean?
So basically, somebody who operates in sin,
mm-hmm.
You try to win them back. But if they continue in their sin, they're going to be given over to a reprobate mind and heart.
Okay, gotcha.
So reprobate is basically just they've already turned away from God, but they're sealed. Their fate is sealed, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand a lot of what you're saying in the sense that it does sound like all this stuff is. And I'm not going to just dismiss it. I'm not going to be that guy.
No,
that says,
and I don't want you just to believe it either, because that would be believing something without.
Well, maybe I'm going to actually do some more digging because of what you're
saying. And that's the goal, right? Well, but look at it this way. I mean, you have to recognize that the elite is obviously running away with this world somehow, and it seems very weird that they were able to do that. Then you start looking at like Revelation, right? Just look at Revelation in and of itself. What a horrendous book! It is like a riddle. And it's got all this blood. And
I love the book of Revelation. It makes me.
Yeah, but isn't it like a riddle? Isn't it like a puzzle?
Yeah, but
that's what you think the creator would do to you?
It's rooted all over the Bible. Honestly, it's all.
But I hear Christians talk about it like it's a guidebook. Like, here's a guidebook for life. God,
Christians hardly ever get into Revelation because they can't figure it out.
Right. And, God, I just look at things and I try and ask myself, would God do this? Would God give us a book that's like a puzzle that does, the number of a man, and and then nothing from it ever comes to fruition. It's just like, it's supposed to be that every time that has ever been is the end times. And that's the case. Like, if you go back and look at 1666, Newton and them, the guys thought it was the end of the world. So no matter what year you're at, people thought it was the end. The reason for that is that's the way the book's written. The book is written in a way where they say there'll be wars and rumors of wars. Well, if you think that there's ever been any time period in the history of the world that there hasn't been wars or rumors of wars, you're very confused. There's always wars and rumors of wars. So everybody who's ever lived has thought that they were in the end times. And almost every Christian I've ever spoken to, and when I say almost every, I mean 80% or more, believe that Jesus is coming back in their lifetime. My grandparents told me when I was young, Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. They're both dead. My mom told me Jesus is coming back in her lifetime. She's dead. So I'm not going to be number 60 in a line of my generation since Jesus who believes Jesus is going to come back and save the world when he's not. So we need more people to reckon. And if Jesus comes back when we're out fighting the NWO, when we're trying to take down and Jesus, we've been waiting for you. Let's go. But why are people just sitting around waiting? To me, it's a sign. And let me give you one more example. It's a sign that the government is behind this all. Why would the United States government tax every single thing possible? They tax no matter what you do, but they don't touch the church. So to me, the reason for that is because the church is exactly what they want. They want people to, number one, give money to the church. Number two, to be complacent, to be meek, to be good, to be mind your business, to passive, right? So all the things that they try and promote that Jesus is. And then you read the Sermon on the Mount and you're like, Jesus is encouraging this behavior, the meek, the mourning, the downtrodden, so what they create is exactly the world that we have. We have a world now where the good people have nothing. The good people have no money. They've got nothing. And the evil people in this world are running rampant with every bit of money that there is. So
But the thing, and by the way, my earbud died, so I sound a little different.
No problem.
So I think that I just lost my train of thought. Keep going.
So to me, one of two things is either true. Either everything that in the Bible is true and that our gift will be in heaven, in which case, then it all makes sense. Then that's why the evil is running rampant. That's why the meek have nothing, because we're going to get rewarded eventually. However, if that were the case, then Jesus wouldn't say things like, I'll be back quickly. So, people here won't die until, by the time I come back. There were things that were said that were clearly pointing out some sort of a short time frame, not 2,000 years. So it seems like it was like the never ending thing. So when Jesus says, there'll be wars and rumors of wars, don't worry, these things must happen before I come. So by saying that, nobody worried when there's famines and wars, because they thought, well, these things must happen before Jesus comes. So everything seems like a well planned out situation. And then I kind of follow the Bible as a history of mankind. If you kind of look at the Old Testament, they had to control people with the threat of God. God's going to smite you. God's going to kill you. If you do this, if you have an adultery, if you do this, if we're going to stone you, God said to stone you. So it was a very control mechanism to get people in line with, like Moses and those guys used to steal from everybody. They would tell people, bring all these things for God. Well, God doesn't eat things, and he doesn't have gold and silver and flowers. So they stole it. So they had everybody in the camp bring them gold, silver, flour, the first lamb, the uncut, the unleavened bread. And then they ate it and stole it. What else did they do with it? They did. God doesn't take.
Well, that's them donating to it was the church of that time, you might say, and it was.
They were a traveling tribe. They traveled, so there's nobody. They stole it. What else would they have done with it?
I just liken that to tithes and offerings or something.
Yes, but if I told you guys to come over my house every day, but every day you had to bring God to $100. After a couple times you bring me $100, and wouldn't you eventually ask, like, where's that money going? Oh, I'm giving it to God. Like, the whole story is them, and this is not like every day God required them to bring stuff every day. So where was this going? Where was all this stuff going? God didn't need it. So to me, it seems like it's all a scam. That from the very beginning of Moses scamming people, Aaron scamming people, at any time that God wanted to, he just killed people, killed groups of people, told them to get rid of the men, but keep the women and the children. And when you hire them as a sex slave, do this, like there's all this, that's not how God would act. And then the killing of the firstborn of the Egyptians' children is the capper for me. That as a father, it doesn't matter what, because here's the problem with Christians is they all make up an excuse for it. Like, well, you don't understand what it was like back then. I'm like, no, all I need to know is that God killed the children of people that he didn't like, whether they sinned, because they're like, you don't even know what the Egyptians were doing to the Hebrews. It's like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care what they were doing. He cannot kill their babies. So because the reason that they say God did that is because they were worshiping other gods. And like I said, if God comes and kills my son, I will spend the rest of my life making sure nobody worships that God. It's never going to convince me to worship that God. That's dumb. Who would believe that? But that's what the Bible tells us, is like God wanted his power to be shown, and he was mad at the Egyptians for worshiping other gods. So he killed the firstborn, not just the firstborn child, but the firstborn animal. So dogs, cats, horses, pigs, cows. So that's not a worship-worthy character. And
I have a family member. Well, they're kind of a distant family member. They're my brother's wife's sister. They lost their son to leukemia at 3. And I've tried to look at that like from the deepest level, and having your own kids just brings it to reality more so, because you don't really know who's a kid until you know what it is to have a kid.
Yeah. How old was he when he died?
3.
Yeah. My wife lost her 5-year-old niece to an asthma attack on her mom's kitchen table. Started having an asthma attack when the parents were out shopping, and they tried to call 911, tried to give her, and she died right there on the table. Saddest thing you can ever.
Oh my gosh.
See. Yeah. Terrible.
Well, you know, I started looking at death differently than I ever did before, because I mean, I literally look at death day in and day out, whether it's near death or full death.
Right.
And I know I have a weird fascination with it, but the reality is I feel like death is just a transition, and it's not necessarily like suffering. The only one really suffering is the family left over. And now, granted, I don't know really the fullness of it, because in some ways, I almost wonder if there's a deception, you know, that is happening on the other side, and it is you know, putting you back into the matrix, like reincarnation. I don't know, but again, I look at reincarnation like it's not a timeline. I look at it like maybe we're having another life, or maybe we're having another experience that someone else might have experienced at one point. Because it's
the problem with the way it was done is what I'm saying is, if God cared about people loving him, worshiping him, and wanting to see him as the great good God, he would never kill their children. So it's also like, so basically they say humanity's garbage because Eve ate the apple, and now we're all fallen and we're all born in sin. So God should be taking steps to make us better people. You wouldn't be like, he required animal sacrifice. So
can I tell you something that I think it kind of throws me for a loop about that story?
Yes.
About the firstborn. I actually think about the magicians that are with the Pharaoh, how they throw down their staff or whatever.
Right. Turns to snake.
Throws his staff down, and they're just like kind of going back and forth, using the same kind of magic, you might say.
Right.
And then the way that you know that God's more powerful is that his staff, which was a snake, ate the other snakes. And it's like, that sounds like a story to me.
Right.
It's not, there's a lot of mythology that comes from the Egyptians, right?
Yes, tons. Up, you went mute. It like made some scratchy noise in the
I was opening my earbud case and it tried to get over. But yeah, so I don't know, man. To be honest with you, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think differently than most of the Christians you'll probably talk to. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of my fundamentals from the Bible, but it's just I interpret it differently. And honestly, it helped me look at things differently. Having that, I had 2 different interviews with Robert Farrell, and we talked about manna and how the children of Israel found manna in the wilderness. It's all a freaking parable, right?
Right.
Because what it was is, there's just something that transcends the story that you're supposed to take away from it.
So maybe the deception is the idea that it's literal.
Yeah.
So nowhere does it say that. Nowhere does
really. That's the thing that's really the deterrent in a lot of ways when you really start looking at it from that perspective.
That's a great point. You're right. I'm now thinking like, how would I read the Bible if somebody told me, read it and don't look at it literally?
Yeah,
it would be totally different because I'm taking everything in there as literal.
Yeah. So if you're looking at all those people that say, this is the inerrant word of God, I believe every word in it, it happened the way that it said. I actually started considering Robert Farrell's perspective in the sense that everything was written from the perspective of a parable. When you go back and look at mythology, everything was a parable.
Correct.
There was some sort of, there was a pattern of how the literature back then. Everybody just, you're trying to almost like, I think that everything's were written in the form of mysteries so that you can dig and figure it out. And I don't think that, when you say that if the creator, decided to, put everything in the form of mysteries, why would you hide it? Why would it have to be a riddle or whatever?
What I mean is that if it's dependent on your salvation. Right.
Yeah, but I don't really look at it like that anymore, because I actually feel like, maybe this is a testing ground, you might
Which
say.
it is. Yes, absolutely it is.
Yeah. So maybe like it's not the end all,
So what are you, let me ask you though, are you more impressed with somebody who's a free thinker or somebody who believes everything science says?
Well, I guess it depends on what the outcome of their belief system is.
So the believer in science believes in vaccines, believes in
if they just follow the narrative, I disrespect their position. I think it's BS.
Okay, and then the person that's a free thinker and open to lots of things.
If you're open-minded to things that are outside of the mainstream,
right,
more often than not, you're actually going to find the truth, in my opinion.
Okay. So then why would you think God would be any different? So for instance, God then looks at people. Why would he be favorable for the people who have come here to believe in a book that was taught to them, and that's it? That's where they stop. That's where they stop growing.
I mostly look at it from the perspective that Jesus said that, people would come, the Pharisees or something, he gives the parable of the loaf. There's unleavened bread and there's leavened bread. You have the leaven that basically corrupts the loaf. It's no longer, once you have a little bit of yeast that gets into the loaf, it corrupts it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we are in a corrupt church. We are in a corrupt system of Christianity. So I'm going to agree with you on that, okay?
Which God would have known, though. He would have known that was coming.
Jesus called it, though. He freaking said, just look for the signs that you're probably going to start seeing a corrupted church.
Yes. And then that's like you said that I totally agree with, though. I use things words that are from the Bible, ideas that are from the Bible, like the eating the apple, I believe, is kind of when you become born again, when you now see the difference between good and evil, right? So growing up,
nothing more parabolic than that story, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, growing up, you just do what you do as a teenager. In my 20s, girls, drugs, everything, just having fun. And then it was towards the end of my 20s where like you almost get slapped in the face one day, and you're like, "Wow, everything I'm doing is like wrong." Is like, it's not constructive, it's not productive, it's actually destructive. So you're like thinking about it, and then the next time you go to do it, now it's on your mind, and you're like, oh shit, I know by doing this I'm doing wrong. I know
you ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil,
right? So then from that moment forward,
where you went wrong,
right? So now you have to now I feel like it is a sin. Where before I don't feel like it was a sin, I was just doing shit. But now if I were to go against that feeling inside me and do something I know is wrong, that's sinning. And that's where I think you're turning your back on the creator of what we're supposed to do here. So to me, I think that there's enough, and I call it born again. Like people, I'll say I'm born again, not a born again Christian, but I believe that I was born again in a place now where I can't sin. I'm constantly trying to do the will of God, which I think is morality. I think morality is the will of God. That's when you're operating morally, you are doing the will of God, right? So there's too many things in the Bible that just don't work with when you really think about it. And just Christians believe it, like Jesus being the greatest sacrifice of all time. When you really look at that, it's not a sacrifice. A sacrifice is when if there's a little girl running out in the street and I go run out and I get hit by a car and I die, I sacrificed my life. I was going to die for that little girl's life. That's a sacrifice because I'm not God. If I was God and I went and put myself in front of that car and got killed, you can't call that a sacrifice. I became God. How is that a sacrifice? You can't get something better than what you gave up and call it a sacrifice.
So if you're looking at it from a parable perspective, what if when the wise man built his house upon the rock?
Okay,
that's part of the Sermon on the Mount, by the way.
My problem with that though is that Jesus, it's not a good doctrine to teach people that Jesus died for your sins, because people think that they are forgiven for their sins.
Well, I don't really think I'm trying to remember where it says that in the Bible, if it even says.
Good point. I think it's more of what people believe.
It's how they interpret it. So when you say that Jesus died for our sins, I don't really think the Bible, said it that way. I think that what it was is he laid a foundation, and the foundation was the rock. And that's how you're supposed to establish your structure on the rock. So when you're looking at it like, So Jesus actually says in Matthew chapter 7, he says, many will come in my name saying, Lord, I did all these things in your name. And he says, depart from me, I never knew you. You have practiced lawlessness. You didn't do the will of my Father. So, and again, a lot of this stuff is just, Jesus says, I do the will of my Father. That's it. And my Father basically lays my foundation. Now I'm going to set the foundation down so you can see what that looks like. And when you look at it from a parable perspective,
right? But God in the Old Testament would constantly,
operate from carrying our cross and laying our life down for others. Now, does that mean we go hang on a cross and die for the sins of the world? I don't think that's what it's saying at all. I think it's saying that if we are to do the greater and mightier things in his name, I think that the only way we can do that is operating from the foundation that he laid before us. Now,
and that's a good point. That's true. I agree with that. I think that the problem becomes anybody who, like you just said, he tells you, judge not lest you be judged, right? Yet, in the Old Testament, that's all God was giving Moses to do, is go judge people, to go stone people. Every time here's this guy, he's been working on the Sabbath, stone him to death. Here's this girl, she did, stone him to death. So it's like, how could you then say, judge not lest ye be judged? It's just like God gave direction for what happens when you're an adulteress, you get stoned to death. What happens when you cheat on your wife, you get stoned. So then Jesus comes and he finds that girl, and the guys are all talking to him, calling her an adulteress. And then Jesus says, get out of here. You guys can't judge her. So that's a different person.
I think it goes back to the content of the heart again. So like if you're stoning somebody, you'll be stoned from that same measure, in the sense that, if you think that you have any right to stone somebody, then you're a hypocrite. And I think that that's the most repulsive.
God demands people to do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, is that this is why it's not logically coherent. This is why it looks like to me somebody co-opted, took the Old Testament, said, this is believed, so let's make a New Testament and we'll change it for our liking. And so they took the stories of God, put in Jesus, made him kind of the same guy, kind of his son. And then that's why the story is convoluted, but it's meant as a control mechanism to me. Again, it's not a good story. If you're looking at the whole thing and like, oh, this is God's gift to the world, this Bible, it doesn't make sense. It's not, from beginning to end, none of it makes sense. People are like, oh, well, we all have all these problems because Eve ate the apple. And it's like, to think that there's a creator who put two people here, forgot to tell them that there was a deceiving serpent flying around, and just said, here, don't eat from this tree. Again, they believe sin wasn't in the world. So if sin didn't enter the world, it means that the Adam and Eve had no idea that deception existed. They wouldn't even know that you could be lied to. So when Satan comes and says, God told you not to eat from that tree, and they said, yep. And he says, oh, you can eat from the tree, you won't die. And they said, oh, really? How would they know that he could be deceiving them? They were never taught that people can deceive. So they go and eat the apple. You cannot, from that point, now God comes and says, now all of your offspring, for however many years it's been, 6,000, 7,000 years, 100 billion people, that he says that now have to go through death and pain and suffering, and you're going to have trouble at childbirth. So any good creator would have right then just got rid of an Adam and Eve, blow it, now they're gone, and start over. If God's real intent was to have people be perfect and this and that, or whatever we're told, then that would be what he would do. But instead, everybody's had to be subjected since then.
I'll tell you, maybe I'm gonna douse fuel on the fire a little bit, but one of the things that bugs me a little bit is when it says that God repenteth that he made man when he was about to flood the earth or whatever,
right?
And
there's a whole things talking about where God says what kind of people are not allowed to come to the altar. Where if you have no hand, if you're ugly, if you got a flat nose, if you got a flat foot, but he's the creator. He's the creator. Can you imagine being, you like go to the altar to like worship him, and he's like, I don't like your flat nose. And you're like, but you made me. Like, really don't like? Okay.
No wonder a lot of Christians nowadays don't like reading the Old Testament. I mean, I hear you when it comes. I don't remember hearing that part of it. I haven't spent a lot of time, and
this is what I'm asking people to do. Read the Old Testament. Just do that for me. I know it's going to, it's not the quickest read, but if you do, well, especially Numbers, Deuteronomy, Exodus, And here's the thing. I get it that people say, but Jeran, Jesus brought the new law. He got rid of the old law. Okay, I get that. But I'm saying if that is God who's talked about in those chapters, then that's not a good character. And there's no way Jesus thought it was a good character. Jesus would never have come and been the person that he was and been like, oh, I believe in this Old Testament God. He's my father. So I do all these good things, because he's not working on. He said like, oh, if I am the Father and the Father is me, whatever, then I think he was talking about somebody else, which is why he said no man has seen God's face or heard his voice. How could he say that if Adam and Eve heard his voice and saw his face? If Moses spoke to him like a friend speaks to a friend face to face, if Abraham saw him and spoke to him, all these people spoke to God, but Jesus says no man has heard God's voice or seen his face. So to me, I feel like what happened was Jesus came talking against the Old Testament and then said, the kingdom of God is within you. I am one with the Father. If you see, and I even think when he talks about to get to heaven, you have to get through me. He could have been saying me, the me. You have to get through the ego, if you will. So I think that it would be very easy for them to rewrite his words, to change it up to make him look like he thought he was God or one with God, and then have people worship him. And then what would they do for a bigger slap in the face? Make the symbol of Christianity him hanging on a cross, which would be their crowning achievement, hanging him on a cross. And then it's like the Old Testament says, call no man your father, right? So what did the Catholic Church do? They said, let's call all of our priests father. The Old Testament says, don't cut down trees and decorate them with gold and silver like the pagans do. So what do the Christians do? They have Christmas and they go cut down a Christmas tree, put it in their house and adorn it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah, but my dad and my brother are both Messianic Jews, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And they reject all the pagan holidays. Those are pagan holidays, not Christian.
Right, but the Catholic Church pushes them, right?
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't say that the Catholic Church is authoritative.
No, but okay, so then we have to realize who put the books of the Bible together, who was in charge.
Yeah, but the Bible doesn't justify that at all. In fact, it says, "Do not deck your tree with cedar, or the cedar tree with gold and silver." It says, "Do not," but they do it anyway.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. No, I think that they are evil from the start, and I don't know when it was taken over, but I mean, I could just tell now. I'm not saying that the Jesuits were evil. They were very matter of fact. They kind of could seem like evil. They never told me anything evil or did anything evil that I saw, but they certainly were a strange breed of people. And then when you read their oath and you kind of see what's going on, and they're the ones who started all the observatories around the world. They're the ones who basically taught different. They're the ones who came up with the Big Bang. All these different things are strangely Jesuit. And and then you've got Freemasonry, which is kind of, it seems like almost an offshoot, or is involved as well. And then you've got the J problem. So there's enough kind of bad guys pushing the same idea, and to me it's just I feel like there's no way anymore that it is what I was taught. And so it's made it much clearer for me. It's made it much clearer that, okay, great. So now I at least understand there is a deception at hand here, a major one. Because before it seemed very easy, like, oh, the elite are lying to us. Just believe in the Bible. This is the answer. This is where I'll go. But then I kind of saw the kind of person that the Bible's creating. And I said, oh, this is creating the exact person that they're walking over. So, and my whole goal is when I die, and if I do face God, I want to be able to explain everything I did. So I've never killed anybody. I've never raped anybody. I've never stolen anything. I feel like I'll be able to answer for my sins. I don't need Jesus to have died for my sins. That's ridiculous. I'm perfectly capable of standing up for what I did in the past or whatever. But I want to be, and so let's say that the God of the Bible is real, right? And he is the creator. Then when I face him and he asks, why did you say all this shit about me? Why did you turn people away from me? I have no problem saying, look at this things that you gave me, my morals, and the things that you were doing, I didn't find morally correct. I don't think turning people away from the altar because they've got a flat nose is a nice thing to do when you created them. I don't think that telling people to stone women who get raped because they didn't yell loud enough in the city, that's ridiculous.
Is that in Leviticus or something? Leviticus or
I think it's Deuteronomy, one of those. But yeah, and it's just, again,
it's law stuff. Okay.
Yeah, it just can't be really the creator. It just can't be. It's like, it's the men back then writing the rules that they wanted. And imagine, this is the way I've kind of worded it before. Imagine that you become king, and the three kings before you all said they spoke to God, and you become king, and now everybody's waiting for your words from God, you would have to make it up. You couldn't just go down and be like, well, God's not speaking to me, because they'd have you out of office in a hurry. So all these kings, David, all these guys, they had no choice but to basically say that they were speaking to God. So whatever they said God was saying, people just wrote down and said that that was scripture. So this is why it's not logically coherent. God seems to change. And then what are we supposed to believe? So God used to care so much about humanity that he was down here talking to Abraham and Noah and David, and then he just left. So now today we just don't, nobody talks to God anymore. It's all very indicative of a large scam. And if God cared about us and wanted us to believe in him, why wouldn't he just show up in the sky and say, motherfuckers, I'm real. It's about time you woke up.
You know, this reminds me a little bit about like what people say about like NASA or something. Like, say, for instance, my brother.
Okay.
I've gotten into deep conversations with him about the flat earth and stuff. And he actually, I've asked him, like, you think I'm crazy, don't you? And he's like, nope. I think it's actually pretty, a lot of your theories and stuff that you're saying makes sense. But I just don't see how there could be such a collaboration, you know, that argument, you know. And
but the answer is education. The answer is education.
But that it's that mindset that allows you to probably think that there could be a collaboration of you know, world governments over time collaborating to deceive through the Bible or whatever.
I'm not even sure if it's that so much, because like I said, I'm not even saying that they're like, this is their,
because I don't think that they could be that organized, but I don't know.
Well, who is they?
They, I mean, you could say, I mean, everybody argues the Jesuits or the, you know, Freemasons or whatever.
Right, but the book is the book, right? It hasn't changed. I mean, we can admit that the book has not changed in a couple hundred years. Okay, so there's version changes, but I'm talking about the general idea. We have at least can go back to 1500 or before that and say the Bible is what it is for the last 500 years. So all they have to do is operate within it, meaning that make prophecy seem like it's coming true, make it seem like it's the end time. So this is why when the barcode came out, it had 666 in it. This is why www equals 666. All those things are meant to be, if they keep showing, why is Google's logo 666? Why is CERN's logo 666? The point of that is to get you to believe that what's happening is coming to pass. Like it's brilliant. Think how brilliant it is.
Yeah. Honestly, the whole thing, what was it? The Bill Gates patent that they did,
right?
The 2020-060606, and then and then the other one was HR 6666
by design.
It's almost like they're intentional about it, for sure.
Absolutely, 100%. And then you get everybody saying, "Look, it's the end times. Look, it's the end times." But it's like, this has been said for hundreds of years. So we have to realize that.
Yeah. So, but going back to like Isaiah 53, are you familiar with that one?
I could look it up real quick. Okay.
It's just, I don't know if you want to just read, I don't know, like a few verses, and I think I think skip ahead like 3 or 4 or 5 verses, Isaiah, and then just start reading.
What is it about?
It's talking about somebody who's pierced for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquity.
Right.
You know.
So is this one that you think is a prediction of Jesus?
Well, I mean, that's by default what people think.
Right.
And it does precede Jesus by 700 years. Now, granted, you know, people could have manipulated that, but at the same time, the Dead Sea Scrolls brought a lot of stuff out that was pre-Jesus too. And, you know, Isaiah 53 was probably, I think it was in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I don't know, you saw that the 16 of them that are in Washington all got proven to be fake. The
Dead Sea Scrolls, or
the ones that the guy from Hobby Lobby bought, the all 16 pieces or whatever they had. Now they're calling into doubt all of them. And I've always said, here's the thing, people, because ran a bookstore, so I understand how books work. People think that we can date books. you cannot date anything writing. You have to date it based on its writing style, based on its paper, and based on its content. So it's very easy to fake old documents because you can get a piece of papyrus, you can rub it in the dirt, you can write with the pen that they wrote with back then, and you can write in a form that they wrote with. And if you bury it and it's found 5 years from now, it's going to be dated back then. There's no other way to date it. They can't. So now the way that they found that these were fake is because they realized that the person writing on them wrote when it was already ripped, because the ink had run into the cracks. So imagine if you wrote on a piece of paper and then you ripped the piece of paper, then there would be no ink over the edge of the ripped pieces because you wrote on the paper. So in these Dead Sea Scrolls, somebody ripped the paper first, then wrote the pieces that they wanted to write on there. But the ink, when they got to the edge, bled into the crease, bled over the edge, which is impossible on a ripped parchment. You wouldn't have ink that goes over the edge. The ink can't do that. The ink would already be stuck where it is. So that's
I never looked into that, actually.
Yeah, it happened in like 2020. So just a couple of years ago. I think right after COVID started, I heard about it, and then if you just look up Dead Sea Scrolls,
I always hear people arguing, using the Dead Sea Scrolls as a evidence for.
Me too, but I hear I always hear people say that they found the Noah's Ark. That some guy.
Oh man, don't get me started on that, because that'll take another hour to get into, because
is that Ron Wyatt guy?
Ron Wyatt, yeah. So I actually almost interviewed the guy that was like
wait, is he a believer?
You might say not. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay.
And what it comes down to is people just go with the flow. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
A lot of people that dismiss him, I think, are like, oh, this guy was proven wrong, don't even look into him. Oh, okay. you know,
or kind of like, I don't know, because I'm always open to either one, but he makes fantastic claims, right? I mean,
fantastic claims, and I spent years investigating this guy. This is the stuff that I got into early on, man. I actually, I have, in fact, I want to interview the guy. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he made a bunch of documentaries about all the locations. The ones that kind of throw me for a loop, Noah's Ark is one of them. Sodom and Gomorrah is one of them, because they have
the pillar of salt, or something.
Not so much that, but more so the little stones that are filled with sulfur.
Yeah,
and you can actually light them on fire and stuff.
I believe all that stuff, and here's where I draw the line: is that just because those events happen doesn't mean God wrote the book. That's where I think. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, even if we did find Noah's Ark, that means a man built a boat, and the boat landed, and then they wrote about it.
It's 6,000 feet up in the mountains. It actually is 6,000 feet elevation.
But is there a boat there?
There's a petrified boat. It's a stone. It's made out of stone, basically. It's
shaped like a boat and everything.
But it's petrified wood, and they found rivets, like metal rivets. They found a shape that is consistent with a boat.
Mm-hmm. Same size. Doesn't the Bible give the size?
Yeah, in fact, the Turkish government built a little headquarters for Noah's Ark right there. They actually
I've seen a documentary on it now that you mentioned that. I remember the headquarters. Some guy went and looked at it. But again, I don't take that away from anything, because to me that wouldn't prove that God wrote the Bible. That's all.
A lot of what you're saying makes me question Moses in some ways, or the person that wrote the first 4 books of the Bible, because it kind of makes me wonder, like. And you would say that Jesus might be deceived if that's the case, right?
But I struggle with that, because Jesus seemed like such a good person, and so it's hard for me to understand how he would come and be so good and speak so good, but then say like he's one with the Father, and that nobody ever called him on it or anything. Like, for example, God's, they found some guy collecting wood, it says, in the forest, and on the Sabbath. So Moses and Aaron bring him to God and say, what are we to do with this man? And God says he must be stoned to death. Okay. So then Jesus is working in the field on the Sabbath, and these guys are like, the Pharisees like, hey, what are you doing? And then Jesus makes up so that's not the same person. It can't be. So to me, it's like, if he does speak on behalf of his Father, in that case, he would have said, yeah, stone him, because God said he never changes. So it just seems to me like I can't imagine Jesus coming unless he was saying, like, what I feel. What I feel is that I can read the Old Testament and say, nope, that doesn't seem like God. I have a different vision of God. And then talk about that vision. Now, I think that if there's a great control mechanism going on that's running the world, and you have some guy come and people start following him and listening to him and being a disciple, and he's, you know, gathering crowds and he's doing good things, I could see that group of people getting very frightened by him and wanting to kill him, because he is going to upset the idea of who God is and what God does. He's already started, you know, so I could see those guys co-opting him, changing his words, and then saying, let's create a new testament and say that this is God on earth. He came to sacrifice, whatever it is that they came up with. And then they would know that people would then no longer believe in the Old Testament God. They would no longer believe in that kind of tyrant. They would believe in the new God. And the new God says to love your neighbor and to let evil be evil, and that he'll come save them in the future, and the meek will inherit the earth. So they say a bunch of things that, and by Jesus saying to give to the poor and feed the hungry, maybe that makes the elite feel better because they don't do it. I mean, people like Elon Musk, people like they could take care of all the kids that are dying in Africa. They don't do it. So it's, I mean, imagine waking up every day and seeing $6 billion in your bank account. I mean, I couldn't live with myself knowing that anybody was dying hungry, when you could get rid of 4 billion of that, 5 billion of that, and you wouldn't notice a fucking thing. You wouldn't notice a thing. You would, you still have plenty of money. So the guys that
they'd probably make it back. They'd probably make it back within a couple of years.
Right. So I mean, that's the thing, is that these guys just hoard money. They do everything the opposite of what they're supposed to do. And then people ask me though, but Jeran, the fact that they worship Satan, isn't that enough for you to know that God's real? And my answer to that is twofold. Number one, maybe they're lying about worshiping Satan, meaning that maybe they would like it to look like that, because then it makes more people believe in the book, and that's exactly what they want. So that's one method. The other thing the other thing is maybe they actually do believe in Satan, and it works just the same as belief in God. So what we're told is that Christians are told is when you ask God for something in prayer, he either gives it to you or it's not the right time, right? Or it's not in his will, something like that. So people believe in God, even though sometimes he does answer their prayers, sometimes he does not. The same thing could be true of the elite. Imagine George Bush family. So let's say they worship Satan. So before the start of the year, they sacrifice 2 babies to Satan and say, we hope we have a really great year. We hope that we make a bunch of money, whatever. Well, if they make a bunch of money and have a great year, then the next year they're going to sacrifice babies again, because they're going to think that Satan is the one who provided that for them. And if they don't, let's say they don't make a bunch of money, they have a terrible year, they're going to step it up and be like, we didn't sacrifice enough to Satan, so this year let's sacrifice 4 babies, whatever. But what happens there is it's this kind of where, and if they don't get what they wanted, then maybe they're like, well, it wasn't the right time, Satan did. So we have to understand, if people do that with God, then why wouldn't they also believe it was Satan? Right. So, and I don't even think, because I believe that the Spirit of God is both. The Spirit of God is everything. And so you can either play towards its bad side or play towards its good side. I think the best example of what goes on in reality is the angel and the demon on your shoulders that they play in cartoons.
Well,
that's what happens. I mean, we're faced with every situation where we can either choose the adversary, which is the satanic, or choose and here's the other thing this world operates on is money. And one of the easiest things you can do is you can convince anybody to do anything for any amount of money, for a certain amount of money. And there's a lot of people, even truthers, that are like, nah, I wouldn't. But I mean, if you're honest with yourself and you think to yourself, somebody shows up at your door right now and says, here's X amount of money. We need you to disappear. We need you to go to this island and never mention flat earth again. We need you, whatever it is. There is a dollar amount that pretty much everybody would accept. And that's a scary thought, because what it means is that's the money runs the world. And if that's true, then we know that they'll even get people to, that's what they call selling your soul, right? And it's truly selling your soul. You're giving up.
Man, to what level? I mean, like I run a business. I own my own business. And, there's moments where I'm like, man, I can just do this real quick and nobody will know the difference or whatever,
Right.
I just want to get paid on this job. I mean, that's the same measure in some ways, but just on a smaller scale.
So, I mean, you would agree then, I mean, there's a price for everyone.
Well, yeah. And honestly, the implications are like if someone said like, you know, I'll give you $10 million, you have to kill yourself and your firstborn, but the rest of your family can have that money. I don't know.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, but that's I don't know about that. I mean, like, there's very little that you wouldn't do for $20 million, especially if they said nobody would know. Right. So that's scary, because what it tells us is, here's another thing. They did a test one time or something where they said if you had a birthday party with all your friends and family, that's it. No strangers, just friends and family. But everybody was told as they went in that there's $100 bill sitting on a table in there, and if you take it, nobody will know. Nobody will know it was you. That every single time somebody would take that $100 bill, which is, it's your friends and it's your family, but somebody, if they knew that they wouldn't get found out. So if somebody is willing to do that for $100, think of what you can do for 500. Think of what somebody would do.
Well, yeah, I mean, people could easily be manipulated and controlled by money, and it's obvious. That's what's happening in the world.
Yes,
I mean, at the highest levels, that's what's happening.
This is why this is why all Hollywood has to go by the woke agenda, and why all sports teams, because you're going to not make money anymore. So,
I think that there's something to be said to that for sure.
But what do we do about that? That's the hard part, is that how do you stop that? Because it almost feels like an insurmountable task, because if you have moral people who do moral things, who have to go against wicked, then it's not a very even fight, because the wicked is willing to do anything to defeat you, right? They'll even cheat, lie, steal, whatever. But if they can basically buy off anybody that they want, I'm not really sure the moral side has much of a chance. Unless what I think is true is what the collection of people, the collection of souls can really, the good of God will always destroy the evil. And especially because we have the numbers. There's more good people in this world than there is bad, clearly. But it's very difficult to get us all together. It's very difficult for us all to be on the same page. They've already destroyed that. This is why the whole 50-50 left-right thing is so funny to me, because it would never happen in a real world. In the real world, you would never have two sides equally split in a country. Like, one of the sides would start to get some of the beliefs to get people on their side, and before you know it would be 70-30 and it would be over. Like, there'd be one side that would win all the time because they were smart enough. So this is by design.
They would just follow the majority.
Right. So now what they've done is they've made it so that it's always 50-50 on purpose, so that they can always
change divided right down the middle.
Right down the middle. And then what you do is you can have these elections where we all think we're getting some choice, but you're just going to pick. It's almost like they all work for the same team, right? So there's red and blue, but there's also the black, and the black owns the red and blue. So the black doesn't care who you vote for, because they own both sides. Now, if that's the case, then what happens is, and I know that the side that owns the United States is a left-leaning side. That's clear, because if you look back, ever since, I don't know who was the president on the right prior to Kennedy, but Kennedy seemed like, at least in my opinion, the last line of presidents. After that, it seems like every president,
conservative leftist.
Yeah, because who has pushed gun rights? Who has pushed religion? Who has pushed conservative values? Nobody. Reagan came, he started to do that, and then immediately had his guy shot in the head, his press secretary, and then he even made the Kelly law. So he went against guns. He was an actor. Trump is a leftist who became an actor, who became a president on the right. It seems like every right. George Bush wasn't a real Christian. He didn't do anything for gun rights or anything for the conservatives. So it seems like all they do is play this little game where you let each group get their time in the sun, let them think that they're getting something done, and the whole time you move the agenda in the direction that you want. So that's why I think Trump will be president in 2024. And I think it's meant to give the right back some hope, because right now they feel really down. They feel like they were stolen the election. So if they let Trump win again, then it'll be more of the same, kind of like now the left hates him, and the left is going to hate. And what you're doing is you're just creating this divide to where we don't think anymore of the president of the United States. We think either it's a guy on the right that we like, or the guy on the left that we hate. And the people on the left think it's either the guy we hate or the guy we like. And that's terrible, because now we don't even have, whoever the president is, half the country hates him. So it's like, that looks bad. That's not the way it's ever been. At least whoever gets to be president, at least the country should go like, okay, well, that guy. But I don't believe in voting anymore, because I don't think it's a real enterprise.
I mean, to some degree, I'm like, I would have rather had Trump, but
sure, of course.
At the same time, it's like I agree with you.
Well, Biden's a joke. I mean, they're all jokes, but Trump was funny at least, and Trump was brutally honest sometimes. But the thing that got me was definitely the vaccine rollout. And
yeah, that bugged me about him too. That's the reason. Yeah. I mean, I didn't vote for him either time, but be honest,
he also shut down Robert Kennedy. He asked him to be in charge of some vaccine safety thing, and then he spoke to Pfizer or something, and then Robert Kennedy said he got like $1 million donation, and then he didn't want Robert Kennedy anymore. So, I mean, Trump is bought and paid for, and he's involved with Israel too much. That's another thing I don't understand is everybody the whole entire country is beholden to Israel, and it's because of this book. It's because the Jews are the chosen people that they think.
Man, let me just say, I don't want to just like wrap the whole thing up in one statement here, but
you could probably.
I want to say that it's easy to dump the baby out with the bathwater. I'm sure people have said that before.
Yes.
But just and then be careful about being militant toward things that. So the way that I look at it now is, I feel like there's so many things that I don't know. That I'm afraid to operate from that, or assert my knowledge on somebody that.
So do you think that that's a problem though? What I mean by that, why not be confident in your opinion, and not saying that but being confident enough in your opinion? Because what I feel like has happened is nobody is willing to speak out anymore because of this fear of, I don't know about that, I'm not sure about that, when it's so much easier just to look at something and make an assessment and say, okay, I think this about it.
Yeah, and I don't want you to assume anything of what I'm saying in the sense that I do have an opinion on a lot of different things, and I will vocalize my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like how much, okay, so let me just say, the symbol, the yin yang or yin and yang or whatever.
Of course.
So it's literally the image of the earth. But it's the sun and moon, and it actually has the darkness and the light. Mm-hmm. And it's a 50-50 of good and evil ultimately.
Right.
And it is a symbol that I think kind of represents the what's controlling the world. And I feel like the Bible really breaks down that good and evil, there's a battle between good and evil. And I often go back to that image of a pie, the pie that has all these different slices in it.
Okay.
And not one person has the full pie of truth.
Very true.
But I also consider there's a lot of deception out there. Nobody knows how much they're being deceived.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't know what you don't know until you know. And I think that when you, and I'll just use the word militant, I feel like you're becoming more militant toward Christianity because of the conclusion that you've come to. Granted, mm-hmm. you might have a good basis for where you're coming from, but and I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that, I'm biased toward Christianity, so that's just the way it is and whatever. I just feel like there's things about the Bible that I've learned in mm-hmm. the last 10 years that I was not brought up into. I'll just say that right now. And it wasn't until I turned on my iPod and just started listening to the Bible that I started gaining understanding of things that I just never knew. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just, they'll do their word studies and they'll break things apart and, try to, and in a lot of ways, I feel like people bend the pieces to fit into the puzzle that they understand. And, mm-hmm. And I feel like it could be the same from the perspective of somebody that wanting to make some work that is opposing it as well. And now,
I guess the difference would be that, imagine the fear, though, if you were doing that and didn't have conviction about what you're saying, right? Or if you felt like you might be wrong in any way. Like, I could never, if I thought for a second that the God of the Old Testament was the God of this world, there's no way I could do what I'm doing. There's no way I could say what I'm saying, because you're basically signing your fate, right? I mean, you're doing the worst.
What if it's Satan, like that one guy was saying? What if Yahweh is the devil?
Then it doesn't matter to me. Then at least what I'm saying is true, that the God of the Old Testament is not worship worthy. So that's all I'm saying. That's basically the basis of what I'm saying, is that if I don't think we should worship YHVH, and by saying that, it's because he's not worthy of it. And if he's not worthy of it, then who is his son? How is his son supposed to be this sacrifice for us or whatever? And so I chalk it up to, here's where people get confused. I don't think that's God in the Old Testament. So I don't think that the Bible is in any way written by any supernatural entity. That's basically it. A lot of people take it to think that I mean, I don't think this God's worship worthy, so I'm going to go against him, and now I'm against the God of the Old Testament. Well, no, I don't believe in the God of the Old Testament. Not that I'm going against him. Not that I want to battle with whatever creature that is that wants to stone people. I believe that is enough evidence for us to know that's not God. And if it's not God being wrote about, then it's not God who authored the Bible. It's not God who inspired it. Now, there's a weird thing about me. I do believe that everything that we write is inspired by God, because I think that we all are pieces of God. So I just think that that's a weird thing when they call it inspired by God. I'm like, okay, well, yes, if what I write down right now might be inspired by God. Right. It doesn't mean
being anointed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess as far as it being militant, I would agree with you, and that I don't want to come across that way. The problem is, usually what happens is somebody will ask something about God or Jesus or something, and I have this conviction that I have a hard time. I'm not going to be able to not be honest. So, for instance, if somebody's saying something and Jeran, don't you think that this, because the Bible says that the earth is motionless, that it means that the earth is flat. So then I get this little feeling inside me like, oh shit, now I got to, like, well, yeah, the Bible says that, but I don't base my belief in flat earth on the Bible. Well, why not? The Bible has 200 verses. And then it starts coming out, because I wish I could just shut up and be like, okay, I don't need to comment on this. But then it starts to leak out. And then before you know it, people are coming at me. And then I have to do a video where I address it. So it comes across militant, because you get kind of these attacks. And here's the thing. I've been attacked by flat earthers. I've been attacked by Christians, and I've been attacked by globe believers. By far, the two worst of that group are flat earthers and Christians. Okay. Globers have not done nearly the things, said nearly the things. My child's been called a bastard. My wife's been called a whore. Lies have been told I'm an agent. I'm a shill. I work for the government. All these things are being said by flat earthers and Christians, not by globe believers. Just say I'm dumb. So they don't need to go past that and say all this other stuff that flat earthers say. So to me, I'm not sure anymore. I know a lot of Christians that are good people, but I know a lot of Christians that are bad people. And so there isn't like this redeeming thing to me where I'm like, oh, we need to save Christianity because it is required in a world of good people. I don't believe that anymore. I think that it's done damage, but I think some people, like my mom was the best person I ever knew. And she was so crazy when she got retired. I said, what are you going to do now you're retired? How are you going to spend your time? She's like, oh, I've got all kinds of things to do. And I still haven't even visited anybody in prison. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, Jesus said you have to visit people in prison. So it's like that kind of thing. I'm like, wow, how do you talk shit about Christianity when my mom's a full-fledged believer, and she believed that when she retired, she still had important things to do in her life, like talk to people in prison. So you're like, that's a hard thing to talk shit about. However, she also said things like, she's like, Jeran, is it true you don't think that the bread that we eat at church is the real body of Christ? I was like, no, I think it's like a symbol, and this and that. And she was just like disappointed. And I was like, I also don't think he rose from the dead. And she was like, oh my God. If Jesus,
that's a total religious perspective. There's so many religious perspectives.
Yeah, she's like, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, I don't have a reason to live. I'm like,
it is a literal symbol, and that's what I think it says in the Bible.
Yeah, I don't know. Catholics are crazy. Catholics believe a lot of, so I mean, they didn't tell the mass in English or in a language that people could understand until the last 100 years. Before that, they used to face the wall and speak Latin. So people in the audience just sat back there and didn't even know it was being said. So anyway, but my point is that I think that there are, there's like, we've gotten to a point in humanity that I feel like if people all came to the agreement that, okay, the Bible is not the word of God, and it is a great storybook, and yes, it's a good story about Jesus and what we should be and how we should act. I feel like that is a better world going forward than the world that we're going to be in. And I know that I'm not going to be able to change that, but the problem is, and you're going to hear this and I'll hear this, every day is a new video about some end date prophecy, some end time prophecy. It's the end times. It's the times of Noah. We haven't had a good satanic commercial in a while. Every 6 months or so, there's a satanic commercial that comes out that gets passed all around. It's a sign of the end times that's coming. And it's like, I used to kind of fall for a lot of that. I used to fall for dates. There was a guy who said there was a date, in the past, and then they showed the sky, and it was like totally true. Like the lady with the crown of the sun, and she has a baby. The revelation that matches perfectly with the sky. Revelation that talks about the dragon, and she has 7 stars, the diadems above her. Anyway, there's a period of time once every couple of years where the sky lines up perfectly like that. But they kept bringing it up to like 3 times to realize, like, oh, this is the same thing. And they'll always say something like, this alignment only happens once every 750 years. And everybody just believes it. But when you actually go look into it, it happens every 3 years. And they just keep recycling the same story. So then I started realizing, like, I don't think any of that stuff. And I used to believe it. I used to believe Jesus would come out of the sky. I used to believe he would return to earth and we'd all see him. And now I just kind of realized that belief is retarded. Like,
can I just tell you where I've kind of gravitated toward now?
Yeah, please.
Like, I think that there's a separation of the sheep and the goats. It's the hypocrites and the authentic, and the people who have Christ in their heart, not necessarily Jesus, in the sense that if we are operating from what Jesus taught us. And carrying our cross, building our house on the rock, or doing the will of the Father, I actually feel, and again, I understand all the things you're saying about whether is Yahweh worthy of worship according to our the way that we operate from our society. I feel like we're raised into a certain mindset, and I'm not trying to justify killing anyone, because that's not what I understand now. In fact, everything you're saying makes sense to me because that's how I was raised. So, but what I was trying to get at with the Vikings is, like, I feel like they're raised into a way of operating, killing for honor. And now I think it's a little different, obviously, but I feel like it's not honorable to go and stone somebody because they were sinning. But I think that the Vikings would have no problem, just killing people for honor's sake, or for preserving their culture. Now, am I liking
if they were in charge of humanity and that's how they felt they needed to treat certain people, and then they wondered down the road, like, I wonder why all these people are not being good people. It would be easy to tell. Well, you taught them to kill. You taught them that there's honor in murder. So that's where I'm getting at, is that that's not the correct way to teach children. Neither is asking for a blood sacrifice. I mean, you have kids, you said, right? So if your son comes home late, you tell him to be home at 8 p.m. and he comes home at 9:30. You don't tell him to go get you a calf and kill it and put it on your doorstep, because you're not dumb enough to think that that would be in any way a benefit to him. So
and honestly, I feel like that is contradictory to it's like being a hypocrite. You can't be a hypocrite and just go and slaughter a calf, and that's legit.
Correct.
No, it's the content of the heart. It always falls back to that. And I think that's what is clarified in the New Testament, is the content of the heart really will shine through. Well, even in judgment or whatever.
But the Old Testament didn't seem like that at all, right? The Old Testament was simply cut and dry, bring me a calf, make me a thing of oil, and make me a thing of flour. So again, to me, it's like, if that was being taught to the people in the ancient times, they weren't being taught correctly. And who do you have to blame for that? If the Bible is God's word, you would only blame God. And that, to me, is impossible to do, because he must be more moral than me, and he must be smarter than me. And therefore, if the God of the Old Testament is not, therefore it's not God. It's a deductive explanation. But as far as it being militant, I don't have a problem with people, because like I said, people are good Christians. I have a problem, though, if people are going to tell others that they're going to hell. Okay, with this, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And they do get very haughty. That Dean Odell tells his people, like, as soon as Jesus comes back, he says that he's getting a city. He's going to be the governor.
Were you in that crowd when he started shouting out?
Yeah, in fact, I was the one. I was talking to that lady, and
there was like an Islam or lady that was like a Muslim or something that was talking, and
then
he was like shouting out
because he was talking about me, and she came over to me and she said, "Are you going to let him say those things about you?" I'm like, "It's fine, whatever." And then she went and yelled at him, and then I should have paid attention to how angry she was when she came and said that to me. I was sitting in the very back of the auditorium. She's speaking to me like, "You're going to let him get away with that?" I'm like, "It's fine, whatever." And then I like look back down at something, and the next thing I know, she's yelling, and like, "Uh-oh." But yeah, that guy. And then he called me an antichrist and my wife a foul-mouthed heathen or something. But here's another thing that I look at is how brilliant is this? Let's imagine that it's all a scam, right? So the fact of if you start to notice the scam and you speak out against Jesus, who are you? You're the antichrist. So they've set it up so people can't even say anything bad about Jesus. I said one thing bad the other night. There's already videos out there calling me the antichrist. So that it makes you want to shut up about it. So what a brilliant way to propagate.
Maybe I'm antichrist now because I'm not fighting you right now.
don't somebody will make a video about you.
Well,
luckily I have thick skin.
Honestly, I don't think anyone cares enough about me, so no one's making videos about me yet.
Nobody cares about me. I mean, I'm just a guy who likes to give his opinion. I don't really think that it needs to be so. I mean, people are just. I've watched you for 7 years, and now I realize you're just a deceiver. And it's like, okay, well, it's like, why aren't we?
You know what's funny? I actually took a break from you for a little while because I was like trying to. I did subscribe to your channel early on because I felt so like I started researching flat Earth when Rob Skiba converted, you might say, and I was following him before he was ever a flat earther. Mm-hmm. And so I go way back to 2015. I wouldn't even say that I converted until November of 2015 because that's when I started making my video series, Flat Earth Philosophy.
Rob is one of the. I mean, he's the best Christian I've ever met. He's the only one that ever made me go, maybe I want to be Christian. Which is
he's a deep thinker, man, and he thought about things that were so outside of my realm that I just was. Is a lot. And again, it's a lot easier for somebody like me who didn't really have much of a problem with Christianity. Now, granted, there is moments when I was like, I can't read about Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. Mm-hmm. It just, it's not the kid's story that the church always made it out to be.
Right.
It's literally going out and slaughtering every man, woman, child, and animal that lived in the land.
Right.
So, but then you look at it through the filter, Genesis chapter 6. Okay, that was a corrupted culture. It wasn't just the people, but it was literal like.
But it doesn't really
chimera and things.
It doesn't admit that, right? It doesn't ever tell us that the Canaanites and the Jebusites and all of them were all corrupted and were all giants or anything. It's just something people have inferred, right?
The Raphaim were giants, and I think that they're the ones that Caleb, which is Joshua's sidekick,
mm-hmm.
He said, "Go into the land and find out what we're up against." And he comes back with his counterpart, and he's like, "There's giants in the land, and we look like grasshoppers to them."
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there were giants there.
That one time, but
according to Joshua.
Yeah, I mean all the different nations that they were taking. Because I mean, another thing that bothers
maybe not all of them were. In Nephilim actually means corruption. It wasn't.
Oh, cool.
It wasn't all giants.
Yeah, I guess my problem is I don't think God would ever be sexist or racist, and he certainly seems like he has a favorite people, and that's
weird. Yeah, that does sound racist, doesn't it?
Yes. And he's very sexist, and he doesn't like women, or at least puts them much lower than men, which is expected, I guess, if it's a man that's writing the Bible or that's God. But just things that are weird, that are just too, selling your daughter into slavery, or that women obviously get treated like war booty, right? They're just go in there and kill all the men and keep the women and children for yourself.
Yeah.
So it seems like, that he wasn't a big, and don't speak in church, only ask your. So I believe that I'm a traditionalist too. I'm not certainly a new ager or say, oh, women should be out working. No, I mean, really, I would prefer my wife to be at home raising kids. I'll make the money. I'm the traditionalist like that. But I also think that women and men as a team are so much stronger than one person alone, and they complement each other, right? So a woman is loving and nurturing and caring and thinking, whereas a man is more reactive and not as loving or nurturing. Like, I'm not as loving and nurturing as my wife is to my son, but I'm also better at discipline. I'm also better at kind of ending any kind of shenanigans that maybe wouldn't be ended if it was just her. So we complement each other, and that's how I think kids are raised best, with both a mother and a father, right? So I do see the good in the Bible and what it's trying to set up, the nuclear family, and what it's trying to set up as far as, honor your mother and father, and love God, and keep the Sabbath holy, and don't murder, and don't covet. Like, there's nothing wrong with the general idea of the Bible. If you're getting into the specifics, like, we just need to, as a community, say, like, we don't need to read Deuteronomy anymore. Throw it away. It's garbage. If we don't follow that law anymore, why are we caring what the book says? The problem is that they still want to keep it in the book. They still want to call it the Bible. They still want to say God wrote it.
Yeah.
We read that, we realize that shouldn't be read today. It's too.
My brother and dad would actually argue to say that is something that was not done away with. It was just the sacrifice was done away with,
right?
And all the traditions of the feast and things,
because they don't believe Jesus's words hold the same weight as you might. Right?
No, they consider Jesus the Messiah that came, that was
Oh, they do.
Pre.
I thought that.
He's not Jews. When I say messianic, I'm talking.
Oh,
they believe Jesus was the Messiah.
Got you. Okay.
But they still hold to the Jewish traditions.
Okay, got you.
So, and again, they were grafted in, you might say, but I we were not raised into that family. Mm-hmm. My dad converted early on, and then my brother, he actually said, I didn't. The thing that convinced my brother was in the Sermon on the Mount, where it says, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. That actually lends credence to the law never going away. And
right. And if that's true, then what sins did Jesus die for if none of us are sinning? Right? Like, if
but it does say in the New Testament that if you think the law will save you, you're actually let you be accursed. It says that in Galatians.
There's so many things wrong. I mean, that part that I told you in Revelation where Jesus says he's going to kill that lady's babies or children. The reason he's going to kill her children is because she is eating food sacrificed to idols, but he also says that nobody is judged by or defiled by what they eat. So that's kind of a little bit of a contradiction there. And then also they say that you're not judged by your works, right? So
I have a lot to say about that, honestly. I believe that we are judged by our deeds, and it says it in Revelation. It says we will all be judged by our deeds.
And Paul's the only one that said differently.
Well, actually, it would be Romans chapter 6, where he's talking about he's basically arguing with his flesh. He says, "I'm just a body of flesh, and I can't overcome my flesh." And he says, I forget exactly the words that he uses, but he's basically saying, should I just continue to sin so that grace may abound? And he says, certainly not. We're actually supposed to overcome our body of flesh, and it's only done through the power of the Holy Spirit, which is actually concluded in chapter 8. So it basically says, without the Holy Spirit working through our body, we cannot overcome the power of the flesh. and I don't know. I mean, I know the scriptures, but I understand where you're coming from when it comes to
I just think there's so many,
you
know, Jesus says people will do greater things than him if they believe in him. I've never seen one person do anything close to walking on water, healing a blind, turning water into wine. So that seems like not a true statement. He says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move over there. Again, it could be just an allegory, but it's still questionable as to why you would say that if it's not really the case. It says that there'll be pastors that will be able to pick up, or believers who will be able to pick up stakes and drink poison, and yet there's been many people who have died trying that. So that seems like something to do. He says, people will be able to drive out demons. Again, it's just something I haven't been able to see, or and I would like to see those things. I like to believe in the supernatural, but I just can't. It seems silly to me to be in any way believing that a man will come out of the sky. No man in my life will.
It's weird. I am in agreement with you on this to some degree, because I feel I've heard a lot of claims from people that say that they've seen healings and people raised from the dead and stuff like that. And usually those are in like third world countries or whatever.
Yeah, one guy sent me a video one time. I just got to tell you, on Telegram, he's like, I've seen miracles. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I've got some on film. Like, show me. So he showed me literally this guy like holding his hands like this, and he's like, this guy's hands were off by like 6 inches, and watch, and they like prayed over him, and then they like pulled his hand, and then they evened out. And then he's like, that was just, I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, didn't you see that guy's arms? They were totally 6 inches short when we made him even. I'm like, okay, dude, whatever.
Well, so my pastor, I used to lead worship over at the Meridian Vineyard. I'm in Idaho, and I'm actually, I used to live kind of near where you live. I think you're in Monterey or something.
I used to be, and now I'm in Merced.
Where is it?
Merced. It's in the valley next to north of Fresno, south of Sacramento. Okay,
so I was south of you. I remember seeing you do the stuff about San Bernardino, and I was over in that area mostly.
Okay.
But what the hell was I saying? Man, I'm losing my train of thought.
You live close to me. You were gonna say, I was talking.
I'm in Boise, Idaho. Oh, so my old pastor of a Meridian Vineyard. So I don't know if you're familiar with the vineyard movement, but this guy, he basically said that his leg, he used to wear one of those stub shoes or whatever, where his leg was shorter, one leg was shorter than the other.
Right.
And he actually, his leg grew out and he stopped wearing the stub shoe. And
really?
I have another friend of mine that said, he was prayed over and he took off his glasses and he no longer needed glasses. But again, I hear a lot of people making claims, so I don't really know.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, I believe that we're capable of a ton. I just don't think we know our power. So it wouldn't even surprise me if somebody, it would surprise me if you didn't have a hand and grew a hand back. That would surprise me. But as far as healing, I think a lot of our diseases are mental. I think that we clearly know with the placebo effect that we can affect our own, sickness. And I think what happened with the CV is exactly that. I think it's kind of obvious that they came out and made a big deal about it. You're going to die. And everybody who would have normally got the FLU ended up thinking it was the other thing. And we had this whole meltdown because of essentially the same thing that we've had every year.
Man, that reminds me of when people are told that the terminal, like they get a terminal prognosis, their health declines quickly, rapidly. And how many times have, like my wife's grandma, she was on her deathbed and we knew she was going to die. But it's interesting when you start noticing little patterns. She was laying there. She was waiting for her oldest daughter to come from California to visit her in her dying, situation. And she ended up basically saying, like she was in and out of consciousness. She woke up and she was like alert, and she's like, "Hey, I just want everybody to know I'm done. I'm not going to fight anymore. I love you, but I'm going to let go now." And within 10 minutes, she died.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, like, you can actually literally will yourself to die.
Yeah, I kind of saw it with my grandmother. She had her first leg pulled from diabetes, and then you could just tell she hated life, because now she had to be in a wheelchair. People had to push her around. So within a month or two, she had to have the second one removed, and we just knew. And she basically told everybody, I'm not going to be a burden on people, so I'm not going to get better. And we were all in the hospital room when she took her last breath. So it's kind of the same thing, that she just said, not anymore, and just let it go.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. So you and I agree on a lot of things. I know that for sure. In fact, in a lot of ways, I feel like I agree with, a lot of the stuff you're saying in regards to the God of the Old Testament.
Well, and I agree with you about being militant too. It's something that I need to work on. Sometimes when you try and show conviction, like, I really think this, and, so people don't think that you're, because the sad thing is, people in my comments were like, oh, you sold your soul. And it's like, dude, that pisses me off so much, because I'm doing the opposite. Selling my soul would be becoming a Christian, because my numbers would go up. I would get more donations. I would have my entire audience would come together. It's kind of what I wish could happen, but my wishes don't mean anything. I mean, I want the Bible to be real. I want there to be a book that we can all rally around and say, this is objective truth. So it's not a happy moment for me to say, no, it's not. It's just reality. Yeah. So, that's all I can do, is be honest with people about my honest opinion. And if I'm wrong, so be it. I mean, that happens to everybody, but at least I'm honest, which is something I can't say for many other people. I don't see a lot of people that are truly honest anymore. I see people who say whatever the mainstream is, or repeat narratives, or all kind of say the same thing. It's just, it becomes kind of like there's not a lot of channels on YouTube I watch anymore. Just not. Back in the day there was, but now it's like every channel I think of, I'm like, no, that guy lied about that. No, that guy seems to be way off on this. I don't like that guy's take on this. So it just becomes like nobody's really impressing me much anymore.
Well, freaking sub to my channel and you'll find some interesting
do it right now. So, actually, I don't think I have it. Look that up.
I actually, so my, I interview a lot of near-death experiencers. But the thing that really has thrown people off lately is I've entertained the soul trap, you might say. And
I've heard a lot about it. I don't know what we can bank on that. How do we know that any of it can be substantiated? So is that the one? I mean, they put like your mom in front of the white light, and then you get recycled. Your soul gets recycled.
Well, basically, when you die, there's nothing but deception. It's just trying to lead you into a soul trap, and the only way you can overcome it is actually knowing the deception.
Right.
And so a lot of people, and again, I can't argue against that. Being Lucifer, the angel of light, masquerading as Jesus or whatever. I'm not saying. Right. That's an impossibility. And to be quite honest, I don't really understand, what if this whole frequency of light, or, the frequency of God is just, we just jump over that, the dark realm, and we don't have to deal with that. If we can tune into the frequency of God. So now granted, all of it's speculation. I entertain, a lot of speculation, but I try not to speculate too much. Even though I do a lot of fringe topics, but I've interviewed a lot of the mainstream flat earthers. I've interviewed Mark Sargent. I interviewed Dave Weiss.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. No, honestly, he was trying to get my wife to come in here. She's like, because I told him my wife doesn't necessarily believe in the flat earth, and she lets me kind of do my thing.
It's good.
But she's like, she basically says, I don't care. You know how those people are. But he's like, come in, bring her in here. And I was like, well, she was visiting. Oh, this is an interesting story. She was visiting with her aunt, who actually is a marine biologist. And she actually was the vice president of a massive marine biology research thing, like a nonprofit. And they did a lot of work with SeaWorld and stuff. And she actually went to Antarctica. And she said that she saw 24-hour sunlight there and stuff, because I asked her outright.
Sunlight or the sun?
The sunlight. I mean, I didn't specify.
I believe
there's
24-hour sunlight, but I don't think that the sun can be seen for 24 hours.
Yeah, and I've seen and again, I've seen the videos that are clearly tampered with.
Right.
Like you could see the clouds repeating and stuff.
Yeah,
it's like really.
It's clear. But again, I'm in the same boat where I don't know. The only thing I can say is that if the Earth was a globe, I feel like it would have been proven already easily, especially with all this rise of flat Earth. You'd think they would do a Fox special or something. And what they've done is they've done Genius, they've done the documentary Behind the Curve, and they've done the National Geographic one, and all three were frauds. So
yeah, and they're easily debunkable.
Yeah. So I mean, that to me is a very glaring thing. Is like they don't want to actually prove it. They just want to make a little TV show that makes it look like they prove it and move on. And that to me is like only the sign of, like when you were in school, do you remember being taught that water goes down the opposite direction in the opposite hemisphere? So when things like that are taught in school that are blatant lies, you realize now maybe people will learn their lesson. If let's say the globe is true, then the last thing you want to do is tell lies about it, because all it does is it creates doubt. Just like you would never go to the store, and you just go to the store and you're coming home and then you like think to yourself, when I get home, I'm going to tell my wife that I went to Kmart, even though you didn't, because it would do you no good. Why are you going to tell a lie when there's no reason? Because what's going to end up happening is now she's going to doubt you. If she finds out you lied, she's going to be, why did you lie? So nobody tells lies when you're trying to get a truth across, except for the globe does, and except for the Nat Geo, and except for Behind the Curve, and except for the Genius program by Stephen Hawking. All of them had to tell lies.
Yeah.
So that tells me that whatever they're pushing must not be fact. If it was, you wouldn't tell lies. Why not? If you have all the money of Nat Geo, you should go to Utah, where there's a big piece of land, buy a 2 mile by 2 mile square or something, and build something that proves the curvature of the Earth, something that people can go and they can verify, and they can walk it with classrooms, and they can go with school children. And then we all gather around and we say, yes, the Earth's a ball because look at this beautiful contraption that we built and proven it. They don't do anything like that, even though they have the land to do it. So to me, those are all signs that there's no way that they want to stick to their items of, boats disappear over the edge, even though we've shown that they can come back. Or Aristophanes proved it 2,000 years ago. We've proven that that's wrong with a close local sun. So everything that they're using for evidence, and they keep repeating it. If you go look up on an article right now, top 10 ways we know the Earth isn't flat, every one of them has been debunked. Every one of them is not a proper argument. So they say, why would there's everything in the sky is a sphere? Okay, great. What difference does that make? We're talking about the Earth. What if we are the most important thing? So we're not a sphere, and there's little spheres in the sky. Doesn't prove the Earth's a ball. So every one of them is like just making shit up, and then expect. And it's like they think everybody's just dumb and will fall for it, and they're actually right, because the 95% of the world just is going to watch that and go, "Oh, Nat Geo proved the Earth isn't a ball." I'm sorry, the Earth isn't flat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, gosh, man, I'll be honest with you. I don't usually go this long. I usually cut it off at about 2 hours, but I'm like, you know what? It's not every day I get to talk to Jeranism, so let's just keep it going here. I don't know. Again, like I was telling you early on, I feel like I'm on a journey contemplating the cosmos. I'm trying to figure out
there is no
what.
Oh, sorry. Just kidding.
Well, cosmos in the sense of reality.
Okay.
Gotcha. I don't necessarily look at it like space. So, and the reason I even call it this is because my former boss at the company that I used to build SpaceX control boards and Loon. We actually did Loon control boards, so we actually were part of the satellite program. So, and again, they outright they had little contraptions that they were what carried the payloads and stuff like that. It's interesting. But so
that's another one. I don't know, because it wouldn't be surprising if they've learned to put things in orbit this way. So I mean, it's hard to just say definitively, but pretty much what I know is that what we're taught isn't true, and they clearly wanted people to think that much more was going on, and they still want people not to realize that everything's done through undersea cables. People don't realize that all of our internet traffic is done through cabling. It's not done through talking to space. But
I just think it's weird when you're looking at the moon or something. I video recorded the moon up close. Well, what I was saying is that you could look at a full moon and literally see nothing go across the moon.
Mm-hmm.
If there's thousands and thousands of
I've seen some though. If you record it, I think long enough, you might see some stuff.
Because I've seen an airplane from like so.
Have you ever seen the show Shoot the Moon? Check out Shoot the Moon. Oh, you've watched that with
Crow? Yeah, with Crow 777.
Yeah,
I've seen that. And then and he does the waves. That stuff's weird. That's weird stuff.
That's weird. But I tend to think that there is the water up there, so I think that what we're seeing is
it's like a wave. Yeah, it's like a physical water wave.
But it's not like water. It's a different kind of water. It's more
like helium water.
Helium-3. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I want to freaking keep this ball rolling. One thing well,
we can do it again. We can get together again and talk about this subject or any other subject you want. But because I think it's an important subject. I don't want to harp on, like you said, I don't want to be militant towards people. Of course, right when I make that, I mean, there's people making videos about me. That's always tough, but I've got thick skin. I deal with it. I just have to get over it. Because I don't know, but when I got into YouTube at the very beginning, my thought process was, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be honest so that everybody likes me. This way, nobody, and that was my honest opinion. I honestly thought
came back and bait you.
Holy smokes. I mean, then you realize that like, you can't, there's just you'll always have haters. You'll always have people that will say whatever, the most disgusting things. It's actually showed me why the internet's bad too, because there's ways to handle things in real life where if somebody calls your wife a whore or somebody calls your kid a bastard, there's ways to handle that will end it that day, right? It won't happen again. Just like at work, if somebody comes into your work and calls you a thief, that's an employee, whatever, they either have to prove that or they can't come back the next day and say it, or else they'll get fired. You'll tell your boss, like, that guy keeps calling me a thief. Boss is going to go over him and say, why are you calling him a thief? Just because I feel like it? Well, do it again. You're going to be fired. So there's ways to end that. On the internet, there's no way to end it. On the internet, somebody can show up on their YouTube channel every day and call you whatever name that they want. And that's a problem because it creates people who in real life could never act like that. In real life could never get away with that kind of behavior. And they're actually celebrated for it, or they get an audience for it because they feel like calling everybody out, calling everybody names. This person's a shill. This person's disgusting. This person's a pedophile, but you can get away with it and you'll actually gain an audience. And that's a problem. So anytime you get an audience for basically lying, I don't mind if people, give their opinion, but the problem becomes and this is the problem with everything, right? Like somebody's just going to say to him, well, Jeran, how do we know that he's not being honest about you being an agent? Maybe that's just his opinion. So he should be allowed to say that. And it's like, yeah, but there's like a certain line you have to draw. And that line is drawn in reality. It's just not drawn on the internet, right? You can only go so far in person. Like you can't, even no matter how much you hate your neighbor, you can't go stand in front of his house every day and call him a bunch of names. That will end within a day or two somehow, whether that's him calling the police, whether that's him being afraid of you and admitting that he was wrong, whether whatever it is, it ends in real life, but it doesn't end on the internet. There isn't that. So what it creates is a different world that none of us know how to operate in. And that's why we have a world now of trolls, and we've got a world now of hate, and every comment section is disgusting and it's vindictive, and people are, because they can get away with anything. So the internet's, I used to wonder, like, how did the elite let us use the internet? Well, it's because they've created even more separation with the internet that didn't exist before, because before you only could interact in person. And so you only could interact in a way that could be handled. For instance, you couldn't call somebody in school fat because one of two things would happen. Either one, they would cry, or two, they would punch you in the face. So you learned not to call people fat. Now on the internet, nothing happens to you. You call somebody fat, that you don't care what happens to them.
Yeah.
So that's a terrible way to, and then on top of that, you've got people who are trying to please many. Like we're probably meant to fit in with 20 people, and that's how you would normally learn who you are. Like when you grew up, you had friends, you probably had a small group of friends, 5, 6, 7 guys. So out of that group, you learned how to fit in with that group. And that's all that was important. Now if you're on the internet, you have hundreds, if not thousands of people that you're trying to fit in with. And that creates an impossible situation. You'll never do it. So this is the problem. Now we've got kids growing up. It's funny that they're called Generation Z, though, because that seems like it's the last generation, doesn't it? What do you do after Generation Z?
Hey, there might be something to that.
A Generation Z1.
Here comes Jesus.
Yeah. So it's like with this generation, I feel so bad for them. I mean, can you imagine going to school? Imagine being a freshman like this year and having Instagram and TikTok, and it would be a nightmare. I can't even imagine it. So, I mean, I feel bad for kids nowadays where they've just got such a different world and they don't even know how to interact in person anymore. It's all weird and quirky. That some study came out recently that showed the amount of virgins going into the first year of college. The numbers are ridiculous. It went from like 28% female to like 59% female. And men, it went from like, I forgot what it was, 39% to 19% to something like 61% or something. So I might have got those backwards, male and female. But anyway, that's a drastic change that we've never really seen before. That is really indicative of people not knowing how to deal with each other personally.
You know how you say that people make a lot of these claims about, everybody has always made claims about the end times or whatever. And
yes,
I feel like now might be the best evidence of a world government, the best evidence of a collaboration of just everything shifting.
But we don't, I mean, the year 800, we don't know what things were like. Like maybe for them, it was much more like a one world government. Maybe Rome was getting together with taking over these other, and they're like, oh my God, it's going to be Rome's the only one world government. And they're going to and there's going to be a mark of the beast. We have to start using these coins that they just made, these gold coins. So I'm just saying that what seems to us to look like end times probably has existed in everybody's time. But you are right. 1980 certainly wasn't like this when I was born.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I mean, I think that that near-death experience thing that I listened to today, the lady was claiming that our country is going to dissolve within, and it's actually going to eradicate paper currency within the next 1 to 2 years from now.
That seems very difficult to do, because what are you going to do to old people?
Yeah,
old people can still barely they can't get rid of their checkbook.
It's all going to be crypto, according to. And again,
yeah, but how is an 85-year-old or 90-year-old going to use crypto? They have no chance. They have no chance. So one other thing I was just going to mention, and then we can go. So yeah, all the things about Jesus are great, but I was just looking at some of the things that he said. I was like, I know there's some things that I'm forgetting about. Like he actually tells you, if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do you think that that's a good thing for Jesus to say? It's a terrible thing to say. Because I mean,
you're gonna have to send me the reference. I don't know.
Luke 6.
I know the one where it says give somebody your cloak and your tunic,
right.
Or whatever.
If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. So again, if these are nice generalities, but they're not certainly I mean, imagine teaching your son that when he's 8. Hey, if anything,
is he trying to say don't quarrel over material items?
Sure, but you better, because if somebody steals your car, you're not going to just be like, shit, I got to go get a new car. You are going to go get your car back. You have to. There's no so to me, I just picture the Savior, the God would come here and he would say things that would actually be helpful. Now, the one argument that goes against what I'm saying is somebody that says, well, you don't know what heaven's like, and the people who do these things will be rewarded in heaven. They could be right about that. So they're right, but you would be completely destroying your life on earth in exchange for forever in heaven. But again, heaven to me doesn't make sense. You even admitted earlier that we were never even told what heaven is. So it's hard to give somebody your reward is in the future. Like we would recognize that as a scam on earth. If somebody came to you and said, oh, give me all these things and your reward, you'll find that out later. We would be like, scam. Anybody who's going to give a reward or anything is going to tell us what the reward is, not just give us it will come. Because heaven never worked for me. Heaven didn't, people are like, oh, be perfect, to be everything's blissful. I'm like, oh, okay, what do you mean perfect? What if me and my buddies want to go golfing in heaven? We all shoot 18. Like, what fun is that? I'll kick the ball in the hole. So I mean, things are fun on earth because things suck, right? Things are, you're happy.
We can appreciate the things that are good,
right? But if you go to heaven, like,
we have something to measure,
right? Well, people are like, we're going to eat banquets in heaven. I'm like, yeah, but if there's no bad food, then every food tastes the same. You can't have.
Yeah, but I don't like that argument, because honestly, if you look at the
why would we need to eat in heaven
and stuff like that,
but why
honestly,
would you eat?
I don't think that. So again, I feel like that's symbolism. I feel like it,
right?
You know, the wedding feast and things like that. I feel like.
But heaven just doesn't make any sense. People always tell me when my mom died, people are always like, don't worry, she's looking down on me. I'm like, don't say that. I'm like, I have sex with my wife every night. She's not looking down on me. I really hope that she's not up there looking down on me.
And I'm sure she doesn't judge your performance. She doesn't judge your performance.
I'm hoping she closes her eyes. But I'm like, don't say she's looking down on me.
She probably doesn't have the same convictions she did when.
But what does she do? What does she do? I mean, that's just funny. I picture being in heaven, like, I want to go see what my son's doing. Son of a bitch.
Oh, that was good timing, right?
So I tend
sometimes
to think
oh man,
I know. See, the ideas of heaven, and people like, and I think that the real belief, right, the Christian belief, is that everybody's sleeping right now. Would that be correct? Nobody's in heaven right now.
Yeah, men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil.
No.
Grandma used to say.
I mean, anybody who's died is sleeping right now.
Oh, well, maybe that is the view of the mainstream Christian.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think anybody believes in heaven.
My perspective, I don't think that, honestly, and the reason I think that is because there's a scripture that actually everybody misquotes, and they say out of body is present with the Lord. And I don't think it actually says that, but anyways, I've heard hundreds, if not, I swear I've heard like 1,000 testimonies of people's near-death experience where they literally say that there's like a full existence beyond this realm that they experienced. They experienced the full lifespan or thousands of years in just a blip. So,
did anybody ever say anything about the next life? You remember your past life?
Yeah, a lot of them actually. Yeah, because when the veil is removed, you actually have a full awareness. Now,
yeah, I think that this is meant to be a training ground, but only the really good move on, and the really good are the ones who can get to that point in this life without remembering their past mistakes. So I believe the next life should be those who pass this life who do remember the past, so that then you can even refine them better, refine them more, and kind of get to that to that creme de la creme, if you will. I got to go. It's 11 here. So let's do it again.
Yeah, I'm always willing to come on to your show as well, but I know that you have a lot going on.
Been busy, but I kind of got Wednesdays now a little bit open. I've got one next week, but after that, I've got Wednesdays that I've kept open for interviews or shows if people have ideas or something. A couple people want to do trivia.
I think outside of the I think outside of the box. I'm not like your normal. I mean, yeah, you want to talk about the Christian perspective and stuff. I'm willing to represent it.
No,
but again,
I
think I look at it. My friend that was in the chat, he actually was excited about this because he knew your perspective. I told him that this guy was probably going to be militant toward Christianity, and he's like, "Yeah," because he actually would admit to being an atheist, and I'm like, "How could you be an atheist? Everything about it points to there being like a creator."
I think you need to draw him a graph and put God on one side and put nobody or nothing on the other side. And then start bringing up all the things that we wonder how they got here, like humans and cats and dogs and trees, and keep water, and write all those things in and decide what makes more sense. God created them or nothing. And at the end of that exercise, you'll realize that everything that you talked about is in the God side. And of course, nothing is in the nothing side, because no thing can create no thing. And that's all you need to know that evolution can't possibly be true. Otherwise, you have to believe that nothing makes humans. Nothing created our look. This is how they've convinced us. This experience is so magical It's so unbelievable, but we've been convinced of like it being natural. It's just what happens when stars explode. Humans come out who have self-conscious awareness. I mean, it's just a joke. Clearly that is a design, you know?
Yeah. Well, sweet, man. I'm just like, I'm thrilled that you freaking came on here, and
thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I have a lot of questions for you about like your presentation, but that's another. If you're willing to stay on for like 5 minutes,
you got 5 minutes
after this.
Oh,
So what I was going to say is once we end the broadcast, I want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
And then, but as for everybody else that joined us tonight, you know, I have a lighter following, obviously, but I'm if I was more consistent, I'm sure, and if I was more willing to just stand firm with my position, a lot of people would probably be more interested in coming on. So, so when I say I'm not firm in my belief, it's not that I'm not firm in my beliefs. I'm just giving you a platform to explain your position, and I'm not going to get all argumentative about it. I just feel like maybe you're onto something, and but again, I think it goes back to perspective, and it goes back to nature and nurture and things like that.
Well, all that matters to me is that people are good people, and it does. If it takes Christianity for you to be that, great. And if it takes being a Buddhist, great. And if it takes being an atheist and you're a good person, I really don't give a shit. But that's all that matters. So, and I expect the same to be true for me, and it's not. People don't look at me and say, well, as long as he's a good person, it's all right. I'm not a Christian, and therefore I'm satanic, I'm demonic, I'm a sellout, I sold my soul, you name it. And it's like, it's these people pretend that they worship Jesus or that they follow Jesus, and they're nothing like him. So that's enough for me to know that there's issues there. But yeah, next time I'll come back and we can go further, deeper, whatever you want to do.
Sweet, man. Yeah, just hang out for a minute. But as for everybody else in the chat, and if anybody made it to the end of this, I'm very excited that you guys were along with our little discussion here. But anyways, thanks again, Jeran, and
thanks, boss.
Yeah, have a good one.